Our planet is warming, and it's already affecting people and landscapes around the world. But there's one natural remedy that can heal them both: restoration. On the 21st of November, join us for a free online digital forum to learn all about landscape restoration and what it looks like on the ground. Discover successful restoration projects all over the world and hear stories from the remarkable people behind them. Sign up now, and together let's take a close look at the view from the ground. Our planet.
Knowledge Sharing Advisor to GLF, and I'll be your host during this event. We'll have about 3 hours together, and we'll be joined by individuals from around the world. Almost 2,000 people registered for this event from 130 countries. And we felt that this exceptional number is a testament to how many people there are contributing to restoration, or how many want to contribute to the action on the ground. Please make yourselves comfortable with your favorite drink. Raise your questions using the Q&A function. We'll do our best to integrate them into the program as we flow. And make sure you know where the interpretation button is, as we will have speakers who will be speaking in different languages, and you might be needing it. My sense is that there is one keyword that's connecting us at this event, and that's restoration. We know that the climate and biodiversity crisis are already taking a toll on people and landscapes worldwide, with significant implications for food production, water supplies, carbon stocks, and biodiversity. For a livable planet, it's crucial that we work on restoration. Over the past 2 decades, many organizations and local actors have taken action on the ground to implement forest landscape restoration and ecosystem-based adaptation projects with the support of various key instruments such as the International Climate Initiative, or ICI. Through these efforts, these actors have developed a substantial understanding of the challenges and opportunities involved. As Global Landscapes Forum, with the support of the German Ministry of the Environment, Nature Conservation and Nuclear Safety, through their ICE funding and the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, we are delighted to create and host this space to share and document these experiences, to inform best practices and accelerate implementation on a larger scale. We also want to take the opportunity to acknowledge our partners whose pivotal support made this event possible, and those are CIFOR-ICRAF, GIZ, and WRI. This forum is the culmination of 2 workshops we've conducted in Africa, in Latin America, and the Caribbean regions in the last 2 months. Thanks to these workshops, we were able to connect with restoration initiatives and create today's exciting program. So today it's about the experiences of implementers taking the center stage. I'm personally very excited about this event because working closely with those who work on the ground is a privilege. I feel it's very heartwarming, reassuring, and I hope that you will join me in that excitement. So set the scene before we kickstart the program. We want to share the event objectives with you. You see them in the you've been seeing them in the screen. So one category of the objectives we had is really to facilitate, taking stock of results and learnings and synthesizing lessons and identifying key areas for, improvement and strengthening. Another area that we have identified is fostering strategic dialogue on enhancing and improving scaling up and experience and knowledge sharing more effectively. And a final 3rd area that we have identified is exploring the complex relationships between policy, finance, and communities, which are very instrumental for the change that we seek. Following to the next slide, I would like to share with you the program of today. We will very soon start with the opening words, and following that, we are going to have a session where we are going to hear from many projects who are going to share about harvesting restoration experiences. And we are going to move on to a plenary where we are going to talk about the role of policy and finance in supporting restoration efforts. And we're going to move into closing statement and the announcement of our 2024 restoration stewards, which is extremely exciting. We hope that this will also keep you until the end of this event. So without further ado, let's open the program. Please welcome Dr. Cristiano Paulus, a distinguished figure at the forefront of environmental stewardship. As the Director General of Nature Conservation and Sustainable Use of Natural Resources at the German Federal Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation, Building and Nuclear Safety. Dr. Paulus is a leading advocate for sustainable practices and innovative climate solutions. Today, we're honored to have her share her insights on the critical issues of ecosystem restoration, the role of WIKI, and the significance of harvesting insights from the ground. Dr. Paulus, the stage is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Yildiz, for your kind words. And dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants of today's workshop, I'm very delighted to open this meeting on behalf of the German Ministry for the Environment to open the Restoration Experience Digital Forum. And from Bonn, Germany, I would warmly welcome everybody participating from all over the world. Today's topic is sharing the view from the ground and connecting across landscapes. It's our aim to see how best practices can inform and accelerate implementation of restoration activities on a larger scale. We are facing triple crisis of biodiversity loss, climate change, and environmental pollution and destruction. So harnessing the power of nature to recover to a healthy state is our way forward, and unites us in this meeting today. Let me start with a surprising and somehow very nice example of good restoration practice, and that is bringing back elephants to the forests. The African forest elephant is, while foraging, trampling through understory vegetation, and by doing so successfully, they disperse seeds of carbon-dense larger trees. And it has been calculated that just bringing back past stock levels of African elephant in protected areas in Africa would store an additional 13 million tons CO2. That shows the power and the synergies that can be achieved. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, at its 6th assessment report has made it quite clear. Conservation, improved management and restoration of forests and other ecosystems offers the largest share of economic mitigation potential in the land sector. These methods are a feasible, already available option for a deep, rapid, and sustained mitigation action needed in this critical decade. The window to limit global warming below 2 degrees Celsius is closing rapidly. So, Germany, why are we supporting and working on it? The UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration 2021 to 2030, as it encourages a whole of society effort to restore entire landscapes, is very dear to us. It stands for a global movement to achieve our climate, biodiversity, and sustainability goals simultaneously, and thus effectively address and counter the triple crisis. 11 months ago, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework raised the level of ambition with the 2030 goal to bring at least 30% of the degraded areas under effective restoration. That is the famous target 2 of the GBF. We are indeed not starting from the scratch. A lot of work has already be done when it comes to achieving this goal. Let me give you a few examples. The Bonn Challenge sets the goal to restore 300 million hectares of forest landscapes by 2030 with the intention to enhance synergies between the two conventions on climate change and biodiversity. And I'm sure we will hear more about the Bonn Challenge later on. With the support of the German ICI funding, IUCN and the World Resource Institute developed a methodology for restoration planning called Restoration Opportunities Assessment Methodology. The abbreviation is nice, it's ROAM, which has been applied on more than 500 million hectares. The Restoration Barometer is a comprehensive and spatially explicit tracking tool applied in 26 countries so far to demonstrate progress in restoration. Currently, 70 pledgers from more than 60 countries are restoring 229 million hectares of degraded and deforested lands. These figures are really impressive and illustrate how successful this approach has been until today. There are two key lessons to take away. First, get a high-level political commitment early on to ensure that key players are involved. Make sure that restoration planning process is integrated into existing national and subnational processes. And second, pay full attention to the need for in-country policy reforms. Without this, the efforts have been shown not to be sustainable. And some more examples with the support of ICI, the restoration strategies like the Brazilian National Plan for Native Vegetation Recovery have been developed. The contribution of restoration to national climate contributions, the NDCs, and biodiversity and development targets have been assessed, and governments have been advised in this project. BMU gave core funding to major monitoring and reporting platforms. Let me mention the Global Forest Watch from the WRI, Collect Earth, and the Framework for Ecosystem Restoration Monitoring firm from FAO, and the already mentioned Restoration Barometer from IUCN to tackle the challenge of restoration monitoring. I'm delighted that firm and the restoration barometers are also instrumental to monitor target 2 of the GBF. BMU also addresses the needs of smallholders and indigenous communities to provide a living by managing and restoring forests. At the same time, these solutions are scalable and address climate risks. The successful restoration of mangroves in Vietnam by UNEC have already demonstrated its potential to protect the coastline against rising sea level and typhoons. UNEP's Restoration Seed Capital Assistance Facility for forest landscape restoration scales up forest landscape restoration with additional social and environmental benefits by attracting private equity. The Global Landscape Forum is our esteemed and highly valued ICI partner, shaping the global landscape restoration agenda by sharing knowledge and implementation experience with a growing, as we see today, a growing community of practice and political decision makers. In my view, knowledge sharing is key to accelerating the global restoration effort and to transitioning our economies and societies towards more resilient landscapes. I'm very keen to learn from restoration practitioners today where they see potential for accelerating actions. Inspiring insights from project implementations can and will be integrated in our future ICI calls. I thus very much look forward to this forum, its presentations and discussions. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you to the team organizing this, and thank you to all being active for landscape restoration. I wish you a fruitful discussion, interesting 3 hours, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your opening remarks, Dr. Paulus, and giving the necessary weight to this important topic and leading by example for other political actors. As you also mentioned in your speech, the importance of having the right support mechanisms from policy to other ways on our side when we work on restoration initiatives. And we're grateful for your ongoing support for this important work. I'm sure many are going to join me in this feeling, in the sentiment as well. And really great to have you to set the scene and to give the right, the tone to the meeting, as we are going to work hard through harvesting some restoration experiences. And we look forward to sharing it with you and all over publicly with all of the implementers and those who work in restoration. Thank you so much. Then now it's time, I think, to invite our project presenters. They're waiting for us, and they're going to give us the view from the ground so we can all together work on harvesting these restoration experiences so we can take them on board and bring them into our practices. So I just want to explain, how we're going to do this, because we have many projects and we kind of created a little bit of a, structured format to hear their presentations. First of all, they're going to be presenting in 4 areas. My team is going to just bring it up. These are the 4 focus areas that they are going to be focusing on. They have selected 1 or 2 of these focus areas: capacity strengthening, monitoring impact, collaboration and multi-stakeholder approaches, access to markets and livelihoods. And following in the plenary, we're going to be focusing on policy and funding. So that's also going to follow up in the later stages of the event as well. So we will have 2 rounds of presentations. Each time we're going to have a number of projects. We're going to start with Latin American projects and then move to African projects. And they are going to be following a base structure. They're going to share about base information about their event. And after that, next slide, please, we asked them to actually think about their successes, challenges, and potentials in this metaphor of rose plant. So we thought, like, why not take a plant as a metaphor? And the flower of it, the rose, is going to represent the successes they go through, they experience, they were able to achieve, and the challenges are going to be represented by thorns, and the bud will be representing the potential, the opportunity that they see that they can tap into. And for closing words, they will respond to some questions we asked them so that we can gather more insights for development of the restoration field overall. In the next slide, we will see an overview of them, but don't worry, you're gonna just going to listen to many of them responding to these questions just in a moment. After each round of presentations, we will invite an expert panel to help us make sense of all that we hear, because as you can imagine, many presentations coming and sharing, we want to be able to really, have a place to digest, synthesize what we are hearing. So we have an expert panel waiting on the line to join us, and we're going to first start with 3 projects and then move to them. Without any delay, let me introduce you to the first presenter of the day. They are joining us from Latin America, as I shared. Rafael Fluker, the Deputy Director responsible for regenerative ranching and agriculture in the Latin America region for the Nature Conservancy. Rafael will present their Future Landscapes project. Rafael, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm presenting the Future Landscape project. Could you please move to the slide so I could share with all of you? This is a project that is found by IKI. It's a project that is developed in 5 countries: Argentina, Paraguay, Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia. And it's a project that is based in ecosystem-based adaptation, and it's mainly about systemic change through to regenerative ranching and agriculture. Next slide, please. Yeah, so it's ecosystem-based adaptation, and it's also a project of course, regenerative agriculture is also a form of restoration. So as I told you, this project is in 5 countries: Argentina, Paraguay, Peru, Ecuador, and Colombia. And our aim is to make a systemic change of the productive landscape in Latin America, going towards a more regenerative or restorative agriculture, and not only at farm level, but also as landscape level, as the name it says. So thanks to the IKI is the one that founded. This is a project that is in consortium with Nestle, with CEPAL, or ECLAC, I think it's in English, in Spanish, and with UFCITA, the Helmut Center for Environmental Research. So we have like 5 components, and one of them is what brings us here. There is a collaboration and multi-stakeholder. We are implementing a impact network or a platform that supports all the initiatives on of this project. And this impact network is like a Latin American impact network that also have some knowledge creation and knowledge sharing across, of course, in regenerative agriculture. So next slide, please. I know that is a short the time. So our biggest success is that in this first year we have consolidated the concept, and we have put this concept in the value chain and with the partners and with the different sectors that we work in the countries. Another very nice success is the agreements with the private sector to scale in the strategy of regenerative ranching and agriculture in the countries. And of course, we have designed a gender action plan across all these for the 5 years. The 5 years to come, this is a 6-year project. The thorn is, well, it goes in both sides, is consider regenerative agriculture as a restoration driver, not only in the farms, but also connecting farms and making it at a landscape level. Of course, this needs to have a change of paradigm and a change of way of thinking of the private agricultural sector, and also we work with the governments and the national policy makers. So that is, and what we see as a potential, we see that through productive landscapes that are degraded, we could restore biodiversity, soil health, a good use of water, and all of this without losing it to not be a productive landscape anymore. No, we could arrange both sides. So we have local and regional multi-stakeholder initiatives where future landscape add value to scale this transition. Our aim is a systematic change of the whole value chain to transform the value chain into a more regenerative value chain, and the ones that stay in business as usual could end as an outcast that has to come to this new paradigm. So next slide, please. So what kind of enabling factors would I like to see more in the global restoration ecosystem? Well, of course, there is from this angle of regenerative agriculture, of course, public policies to promote regenerative ranching and agriculture, also as a restoration mechanism. Also, of course, there's market transformation and a private sector implementing regenerative practices, and the financial instruments for the sectors that want to make the change, but in this changing phase, they need some special financial instruments that allows them to let the conventional or the business as usual way of farming behind and embrace this new way of producing. The capacities that we need, of course, and there is in the project knowledge and evidence, everything that is that is science, and as I told you, the financial instruments and risk solutions. And I think that regenerative agriculture and farming as restoration is more intensive in knowledge than in capital. But of course, in the transition, there are some financial risks. So what we need is knowledge and some financial instruments, and of course, public policies. Next slide, please. So the next milestone for the restoration initiative, of course, there's capacity building in all the values of restoration and regenerative landscape and agriculture and ranching. And the call to action for the restoration system is, well, an invitation to a paradigm shift to encourage the consideration of productive agricultural landscapes as sites for restorations. And this not only, of course, in the individual properties, ranches, but mainly at a landscape level. We think the regenerative agricultural practices can be synergistically combined with ecosystem restoration initiatives, fostering and increasing, of course, biodiversity, soil health, water, and pivotal actions. And for these transformation, we have considered like 5 outcomes, as I told you. One is this platform or impact network. The other is all that have to do with knowledge and with knowledge, not only transformation, but knowledge generation. The other one is the business models that needs to be on site for this to be implemented or to be adopted. And of course, public policies and financial special instruments. So this is a big project financed by IKI in 5 countries. We are trying to change the paradigm and to change the business of agriculture. And we are trying to make restoration through productive landscapes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rafael.
I'm very happy.
Thank you very much, Rafael, for your contributions, and thank you for also making the time. I know that you have to catch another meeting, and yet you still made the time to join us. If you're able to still stay until our expert panel comes on board, you know, they might also invite you to talk further. And otherwise, we wish you a great next meeting. We know that everybody is really working towards.
Thank you. It's with the German embassy to present the project anyhow. So thank you very much, and thank you, the IKI.
Thank you, Rafael. I suggest that we go to our next presentation, which is going to be with actually one of GLFX chapters, part of the GLFX program representing GLFX Guatemala. We are going to have Juan Andres Nelson, who is going to be presenting, and Juan Andres is Watershed Management Coordinator at the Private Institute for Climate Change Research, ICC, and they're going to be speaking in Spanish. I suggest that everybody checks the little world shape icon at the bottom of their Zoom screen to switch to Spanish language, English language, or Spanish, whatever way is the right one for you, so that you can listen to Juan Andres in the right language. Juan Andres, we're listening to you.
Muchas gracias. Un gusto. Muy bien. El día de hoy pues vamos a tener la oportunidad de contarles algunas de las acciones que se están llevando a cabo en la costa sur de Guatemala. Pues yo trabajo para el Instituto de Cambio Climático y pues trabajamos de parte del sector privado para implementar acciones en temas de restauración y cambio climático. En este caso, como parte de las acciones de la red, pues vamos a hablar del caso de restauración en una comunidad que se llama Canuitas. Entonces, esta comunidad Está ubicada en el departamento de Escuintla, municipio de Nueva Concepción, que pues es más o menos entre 50 y 100 metros sobre el nivel del mar. En esta comunidad pues es un parcelamiento agrícola, o inicialmente fue pensado como un parcelamiento agrícola, y pues hemos ido tratando de incluir en este paisaje agrícola actividades de restauración. Entonces, esta zona es bañada por varios ríos. Uno de ellos es el río Coyolate, el cual hace algunos años tuvo un estudio hidrológico, el cual manda a fortalecer las medidas de prevención de inundaciones con bordas, ¿verdad? Que sería diques longitudinales, y estos diques fortalecerlos con bosque de ribera o restauración de bosques en la ribera de los ríos. Entonces, y podemos pasar a la siguiente. Gracias. Esta comunidad, que era una de las más afectadas por temas de inundación, tomó la iniciativa de establecer bosques de ribera, y pues a esta iniciativa se sumaron varias colaboradores, ¿verdad? Entonces, nuestra primera parte era cómo estos actores, que pues son personas que también en instituciones y empresas que eran afectadas por las inundaciones, se sumaron a este esfuerzo de restaurar la ribera del río Coyolate. Entonces acá hay un gráfico, ¿verdad?, donde mostramos que algunas empresas que producen caña de azúcar, la municipalidad, el Instituto Nacional de Bosques, se unieron para implementar acciones de restauración en la zona. Entonces, esta comunidad pues son más de 200 familias, y principalmente se involucró a madres solteras, que son las que más tiempo tienen, ya que están en la casa, ¿verdad? Y los esposos salen a trabajar. Para el caso de los que no tienen esposo, pues ellas tienen que ver de qué manera obtienen recursos para poder alimentar a su familia. Entonces ahí se han ido tratando de dar incentivos que promuevan este tipo de actividades. Siguiente, por favor. Muy bien. Si lo vemos en la modalidad de la rosa, pues se ha logrado producir plantas con ellos. Este año se produjeron más de 5,000 plantas con 25 mujeres. Se han fortalecido los conocimientos en temas de incentivos forestales, diversificación de medios de vida para pues mejorar esa adaptación al cambio climático y poder generar ingresos económicos, que muchas veces es lo que más hace falta en este tipo de comunidades. Si hablamos un poco de la espina, pues como les contaba, que son mujeres, cabezas de hogar, pues es un poco difícil ellas puedan participar porque pues tienen quehaceres, ¿verdad?, en el hogar, y pues eso dificulta un poco su participación, ¿verdad?, en temas de que puedan obtener beneficios económicos también, ¿verdad?, porque el tiempo que le dedican a las actividades de restauración lo están dejando de invertir en actividades que les puedan generar ingresos económicos para mantener a sus familias. Entonces, en temas de hacia dónde vamos, ¿verdad? Es buscar nuevas técnicas y herramientas para producir de mejor manera las especies que se producen, y buscar oportunidades donde se puedan obtener incentivos, ya sea económicos o en especie, que ayuden a mejorar las condiciones de vida de las comunidades, ¿verdad? Si lo podemos hacer, ellos van a estar contentos de participar en la restauración. Siguiente, por favor. En temas de colaboración y diferentes actores, pues han habido participaciones de diferentes instituciones. O sea, de lo más importante que vemos nosotros en esta comunidad ha sido la unión de diferentes sectores, sector privado, gobierno, academia, comunidades, y pues únicamente buscando ayudar con las necesidades básicas de las comunidades: alimentación, salud, educación. Y también esto va a ayudar a que si la gente o las comunidades se involucran en los procesos de restauración, ellos van a ser los que cuiden estos proyectos, ¿verdad? O sea, si no involucramos a las comunidades y lo hacemos con fondos, ya sea de las ONGs o del sector privado, pues las mismas comunidades lo van a aprovechar y no lo van a cuidar. Entonces ha sido clave, ¿verdad?, la participación de todos los sectores para este tipo de actividades, ¿verdad? El trabajo en conjunto del sector privado y del gobierno, ¿verdad? Alianzas público-privadas han sido claves tanto en el tema de gestión de riesgos como en el tema de restauración forestal. Y pues el tema de el reto, que sería, o los desafíos que tuvimos, que son las espinas, pues es un poco el tema del involucramiento del sector gubernamental, y muchas veces no es porque no quieran, ¿verdad?, sino porque tienen deficiencias de presupuesto, de personal, demasiados cambios durante las gestiones, ¿verdad? Entonces esto dificulta que se puedan involucrar y darle un seguimiento a este tipo de acciones, ¿verdad? Y como les contaba anteriormente, ¿verdad?, hay un poco de pérdida de motivación al que en algún momento los beneficiarios no perciben algún beneficio económico, ya que pues ellos, como lo comentaba, buscan recursos para mantener a sus familias. Entonces hemos ido tratando de diversificar los medios de vida con otros proyectos, con otras organizaciones que ayuden a dar ese incentivo a cambio de trabajo, ¿verdad?, en temas de restauración forestal. Desafíos o hacia dónde quisiéramos avanzar, que el sector gubernamental esté mejor fortalecido y pues eso le permita apoyar en este tipo de acciones a las comunidades, replicar este tipo de ejercicios en otras comunidades que tengan unas condiciones similares, ¿verdad? Involucrar a otras organizaciones, dependiendo de las comunidades, el sector privado, promover participación e intercambio de experiencias, ¿verdad? Esta comunidad, Canoitas, pues es una de las que nosotros como ICC utilizamos como parcela demostrativa para muchos grupos, ¿verdad? Hemos recibido más de 1000 personas que han llegado a conocer la experiencia y no la contamos nosotros, sino que la cuenta la gente de la comunidad que ha sido parte de este proceso de restauración. Siguiente, por favor. Respondiendo a las preguntas, pues dentro de los retos, un intercambio con otras experiencias exitosas para promover el manejo forestal sostenible. Creemos que pues, los bosques pueden ser un complemento en este caso al componente agrícola, que es lo fuerte en la zona, ¿verdad? Generar mayores capacidades en las comunidades en temas de restauración y cambio climático. Siguiente, por favor. Poder ampliar esta iniciativa también a más comunidades, como lo mencionaba anteriormente, hay muchas comunidades en la costa sur que tienen necesidades muy parecidas y que este tipo de proyectos pues, pueden ir a fortalecer la restauración y los medios de vida de las comunidades. ¿Y cuál es nuestra llamada a la acción? Pues como institución y como red de restauración creemos que es importante atender las necesidades básicas de la gente que convive con el bosque, ya que si ellos tienen necesidades, pues su prioridad va a ser atender esas necesidades y no tanto conservar el bosque o restaurarlo. Entonces creemos que por ahí puede ser el camino, ¿verdad?, un manejo forestal sostenible y que nosotros lo podemos promover como técnico. Entonces, siguiente, por favor. Acá algunas imágenes de los talleres que hicimos con las personas. Del lado izquierdo pues podemos ver el río Coyolate y el bosque de ribera que les hablaba, y pues como pueden ver es un río bastante grande y que en esta comunidad tiene 11 años de no inundarse gracias a estas acciones de mitigación y restauración de bosques. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Juan Andres, for your presentation and for joining us. Well, we are at number 2, and we are going to move to a next presentation before we invite our expert panel to take a pause and share with us what they are hearing. But let me invite our third presentation to move to that. Next is going to be our third and last Latin American project, and is going to be presented by two colleagues from WWF Colombia. Juan Francisco Garcia and Betsua Carvajal Martinez is going to be with us. Juan Francisco is specialist in ecological restoration, and Bet is project coordinator. They will be presenting their protected areas and peace project. This presentation is English and Spanish, so check your language setup. And we're going to actually start with Bet, I believe. Bet, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Yalit, and thank you for everyone to connect to this presentation. As Yalit mentioned, we want to share our experience working in this project, Protected Areas in Peace Project, which is funded by IKI also, and the government, Germany government. So this day, we want to share the main, well, a couple of lessons learned that we have so far, because we are finishing this project. Can you go to next, please, to next slide? Okay, this project started in 2019, and it has as an objective to improve the protected areas management, but at the same time, we want to promote the territorial governance between involving the several stakeholders who are related with the protected areas, addressing some of the deforestation and degradation causes and drivers in two big landscapes in Colombia. Specifically, we are located in the Orinoco and the Amazon region, and we are working in 6 national natural parks and their buffer zones. So in this map, you can see the areas that we are working. We are working with 6 national natural parks who are located in the main ecosystems. And paradoxically, we have this situation in Colombia because the hotspots zones match perfectly with the areas that are most affected by violence. So that's why we have been working in this environmental peace building approach. And we are working with several governmental institutions. In particular, we are working with the regional, with the environmental authorities, especially with National Natural Parks Agency at the several levels. They are our main partner in this project, and also some of the regional environmental authorities in those areas. Furthermore, we have a close partnership with some of the farmers organization in those areas. We have been working with more than 8 peasant organizations, and also we have a partnership with small NGOs, local NGOs that are working during many years in these ecosystems. As I mentioned before, we are closing this project. This is the last year, the last month, the last week. So we are excited to share with you all these results. We have been working with 230 families, farmer families located in this area. Some of them are inside of the protected areas, which has been a challenge for us in Colombia, because those people are living there for several reasons. One, for example, some of them, they have been displaced by violence or by poverty, looking for better opportunities in these areas. So they are there inside of the national parks or in other protected areas. So that's why we have been designing together with the institutions alternatives to manage the conflict that can be presented or we have to face because the land use restrictions that we have in those areas, because we need to protect it also, but we care about the livelihoods and the rights of those people. So far, we have around 4,800 hectares in restoration process. different stages. And also we have 3,600 hectares in forestry voluntary agreements, like conservation agreements. And also we have been strengthening and promoting around 80 individual agreements between the farmer family and the environmental authority. Some of them, they were leading for the environmental authority, and others, we start from the scratch this process together with the farmers and the environmental authorities. And one of the innovative activities in this case, it was we helped to promote 3 collective agreements between the environmental authorities and the farmers organization. And it has several levels, because inside of the farmers organizations, they have to build another specific agreement between inside of the organization with the farmers and with the families, which who are part of these farmers organizations. And lastly, we strengthen 7 community enterprises. They are, some of them are farmers initiatives, and others are combatants or peace signatures communities, organizations, people who used to be part of the FARC guerrillas, and now they are a part of the peace process, and they are living very close to these protected areas, and they are transforming and looking for new opportunities around the use and conservation of biodiversity. So in this project, we have been working in 4 components. The first one is the generation of information, monitoring, participatory monitoring, and also there is a core aspect in this project that was the dialogues, the roundtables between the farmers organizations and governmental institutions. And from that information, using that information through capacity building process and these roundtables, we promote restoration and conservation agreements. And the third component is the implementation of those agreements that actually we are working on it in this moment. And there is a last element, that is the financial sustainable mechanisms to promote the financial, sorry for the redundancy, but we are looking that those initiatives could be sustainable through the time. And basically, this is the general information of this project. Can you please go to the next? This project is part of a big process that we are living in WWF, working with communities who are living inside or very close to the protected areas, with this kind of around land use and access restrictions. And we have identified these roses, like the positive aspects that we have found so far. Is one of them is the restoration proposals are based on the information that we have been collected, and this information has been collected together between among the farmers, the governmental institutions, and also the ex-combatants. That people who don't used to work together, now they are working together to go to characterize those areas and know what they have, what is the place that they are living, and how to protect those areas at the same time that they can improve their livelihoods, looking alternatives for that. The second one is the restoration agreements are based in the FAR planning. So we in Juan Francisco was leading this process. The FAR planning, it was like the heart of this process, because we build the information together with the people, the local people, and build proposals based on those informations. And those information, that information was used in the roundtables through a consultation approach, and everything, we were talking about this yesterday, every single step in this process is a constant consultation, and it's beautiful because it's like building from the difference. Another two aspects about the process for this exercise, it was the strength that we have been strengthening different roundtables at different scales to promote or to contribute to the environmental peace building. And these roundtables are getting close people to face, to address the structural causes of the deforestation in Colombia. And one of them is a regional roundtable in Villavicencio, which is led by a National Natural Parks Agency. But in the last year, all the institutions who are involved on that has responsibilities from the law, they are sitting in this roundtable, looking the alternatives to resolve or manage this conflict. So going to the thorns, some of the challenges that we have been facing in this process, one is how my colleagues before in the other presentations mentioned, the political will to reach these agreements and sign this agreement, implementation this agreement, depends also the governments and the policies that we have in these projects. For example, we have two governments, different governments. We had to work with two different governments at several scales. So it was a really interesting point, but also it's a challenge because the reasons that my colleague before mentioned, no? The capacities, the financial issues are make this participation a little bit hard. And the second one is a conflict that we can sometimes find between the different strategies to face deforestation, because deforestation is a big issue and it requires several strategies, not just agreement, because we have different stakeholders, different drivers and agents that who are promoting who are involved in the deforestation problem. So we recognize that different strategies are necessary, but sometimes there is a conflict between them because you are signing and implementing restoration agreements for one side, and on the other hand, at the beginning of this project, we have to face several complex issues regarding to the policy strategies. And I would say that one of the biggest challenge in this process in Colombia, or some in the countries that we have to face with conflict, is the armed and internal conflict in Colombia. We have to design several strategies to face the armed conflict in these areas, because the areas that we are working on are one of the most affected by the conflict. So there are illegal armed groups there who are making different policies, to say that one way. So we have to be careful to protect also these leadership, leaders, the social and environmental leaders that we are working together with, and also the staff of the National Natural Parks Agency. So sometimes they are targeted by these groups. So we have to be careful how what is the approach that we use it to work with them to do not harm. And lastly, regarding to the thorn, is the time, because the time of the projects usually are really different to the time of the process. So process takes more time. Doing a really good farm planning takes time. And now we need think in the long term, and is necessary to, for example, identify no timber, that Juan Francisco for sure is going to talk about it, that the time that with these kind of products needs to incubate to go to an access market, for example. So always we have this dilemma between the time of the process and the project, and go to the new ideas that we found in this process. One is not that new, I think it's very well known, but for us it's very important to take this to the next steps. And one of them is apply and use conflict resolution tools to promote restoration agreements. Is that see the restoration as a process. Also regarding to consultation, it's because there is a conflict usually between the use, especially in these kind of countries that are suffering in armed conflicts. So it's like change that the approach and work in these topics more from the conflict resolution approach, to say it in some way. And the second is like include in this same line, by the same token, use the environmental peace building and the conflict sensitivity approach in restoration initiatives, because we are seeing that it's not just restore the ecosystems. We have to restore also the relationships, the trust between these as local stakeholders, because they, or we as a Colombians also, we have been suffering this armed conflict for more than 50 years, despite of the different peace agreement efforts that for sure are working and contribute to the territorial peace in Colombia, but it's necessary to strengthen the capacities that we have as a NGOs, as a governments, as a farmers organizations to work in environmental peace building, because it's the peace that's not is the peace between us as a citizens, but also with the nature. Lastly, we believe and insist that the capacity building is a really good strategy to strengthen and qualify the participation of the different stakeholders in those roundtables. Else, like the workshop, because the workshop is a workshop with a specific goal to promote the dialogue and reach conservation and restoration agreements. And now Juan Francisco is going to present the roles, the thorns and buds regarding to the access market and livelihoods. So I'm going to give the word to Juan Francisco.
Vale, muchas gracias, Beth. Digamos aquí para compartirles también lo que ha sido la implementación de este proceso y el desarrollo que llevamos en estos territorios, como lo mencionaba Betsua, pues identificamos que para digamos, los éxitos que hemos logrado relacionados con esta área de acceso al mercado y medios de vida, pues uno de los elementos importantes es incorporar el tema social dentro de la restauración ecológica. Como lo mencionábamos, estamos bajo un contexto donde los conflictos nos obligan a que en realidad el eje principal no solamente sea una mirada desde lo ecológico y una restauración ecológica en el sentido estricto, sino cómo realmente los elementos sociales le dan una fuerza y permiten que exista esa apropiación y sostenibilidad de los procesos en el tiempo. Lo otro que vemos también que es un resultado, un éxito que nos gusta mucho mostrar, es cómo hemos promovido que a partir del uso y manejo de la biodiversidad se incorporen estos elementos dentro de la restauración ecológica. Y esto nos permite a nosotros empezar a brindar, digamos, esas alternativas para que las comunidades puedan obtener unos beneficios directos por los procesos de restauración ecológica, más allá de el accionar, o decir que se reconoce un recurso económico por sembrar un árbol o por cuidar un lugar, es cómo la biodiversidad puede ser usada en el marco de una restauración y le permite a las comunidades obtener beneficios económicos a partir de esos productos naturales no maderables. Es producir sin necesidad de transformar los ecosistemas, sino volver esos ecosistemas, digamos, mucho más productivos. Lo otro es el fortalecimiento de capacidades. Como decía Beth, hay toda una estrategia para fortalecer las capacidades de las comunidades locales y eso consideramos que es un elemento principal para hacer la apropiación de la restauración dentro de estas comunidades. El conocer, digamos, cuáles son esas causas y los agentes que están generando la deforestación en estos ecosistemas o en estos territorios y entender que a partir de qué lo causa es que se debe diseñar las estrategias para revertir esas situaciones. Lo hemos logrado, digamos, a través de esa generación de conocimiento, en conocer esas causas y agentes de deforestación, pero también en ver y analizarlas con la vulnerabilidad climática. Y esto nos permite hacer la base para que los diseños de restauración incorporen, digamos, estos elementos y las iniciativas se ajusten a estas condiciones. Y lo otro que vemos como un éxito que hemos iniciado y logrado es que hemos generado y promovido, digamos, alianzas comerciales en diferentes niveles. Beth lo mencionó en su momento, que trabajamos con varias de estas iniciativas que algunas ya venían en curso, por eso las fortalecimos, pero las estamos promoviendo a partir de estas nuevas que identificamos en los territorios y que se constituyen en una alternativa de ingresos económicos a estas comunidades locales, ¿sí? Ahora, los desafíos, ya Beth mencionó algunos, que son, pues, digamos, que son transversales a casi todos los ejes de trabajo, pero particularmente encontramos que en los desafíos tenemos una necesidad de una baja capacidad técnica para el desarrollo de este tipo de iniciativas de restauración. O sea, por más de que es una idea que recoge muchos elementos hacia atrás, necesitamos obviamente fortalecer y llenar unos vacíos en esas capacidades, ¿sí? Eso es un desafío que tenemos. Lo otro es que existen unas barreras también culturales. Históricamente en estos territorios se ha promovido, digamos, la ganadería como una alternativa de uso y de producción de recursos en estos territorios. Sin embargo, llevar a que hayan esas transiciones a nivel cultural, de que las personas que tradicionalmente han hecho mucho o han derivado sus ingresos de una actividad como la ganadería, pasar a que se obtengan beneficios y se trabaje, digamos, la biodiversidad como una alternativa de ingresos, eso requiere que hayan unos cambios culturales y que no son instantáneos, requieren una gradualidad y eso obliga también a que uno de los desafíos sean incorporar también a los jóvenes en estas condiciones porque son con ellos con los que vamos a lograr consolidar los modelos de producción en el tiempo. Lo otro, obviamente, todos los marcos normativos que existen, estamos bajo un contexto de trabajar dentro de áreas protegidas o en las zonas de influencia y en Colombia existen muchas figuras de conservación, no solamente están los parques nacionales, hay otras figuras y tienen unos marcos normativos que en algunos casos son muy estrictos y restringen, digamos, el uso o el aprovechamiento de ciertas actividades y aquí lo que estamos tratando es un desarrollo de la restauración como una alternativa de recuperar obviamente los ecosistemas, pero que esa restauración tenga ese enfoque productivo. Y Beth ya lo mencionó, frente a los desafíos desde no mirar las acciones en los territorios como proyectos, sino mirar el proceso, porque la temporalidad de todas estas apuestas realmente van mucho más allá de los tiempos que a veces los proyectos nos pueden brindar. Y por último, digamos, los potenciales que encontramos es que en los territorios, ya una vez andándolos con los campesinos y con las organizaciones y entidades en los territorios, nos damos cuenta obviamente que es necesario la conformación de unos clústeres o unos núcleos que estén asociados a estos productos que naturalmente se dan en estos ecosistemas y eso puede agrupar y fortalecer que las asociaciones se especialicen y trabajen en función de uno de estos productos. Lo otro es la necesidad de que haya una articulación, una integración entre el sector público y el privado, donde hayan garantías que permitan hacer inversiones que nos brinden oportunidades para garantizar la sostenibilidad de estas iniciativas. Hay que acercar la inversión pública y la inversión privada, no es algo fácil en estos territorios y sobre todo en estos contextos de conflicto armado, como mencionaba Betsua, pero es una gran necesidad y una gran potencialidad que tenemos para que se pueda, digamos, articular la comercialización de estos productos y el escalonamiento y poder abordar digamos, esa gran necesidad que tenemos en Colombia de resolver esas situaciones. Lo otro, obviamente, es todo el potencial que tenemos relacionado a estas empresas que están surgiendo derivadas de la biodiversidad y necesitan, digamos, su incubación y su promoción. Y lo otro, que es un potencial y que, sin embargo, es un desafío de los que está asociado, es que necesitamos terminar de desarrollar todos esos marcos normativos que nos permitan la regulación del uso y manejo de esos productos naturales no maderables con las familias que están vulnerables en estas áreas protegidas. ¿Sí? Siguiente. Y ya por último, digamos, para dar respuestas a las preguntas que nos hacían, digamos, los factores que consideramos que son necesarios de mirar y de tener en cuenta para Colombia, en el contexto colombiano, hay uno que está directamente relacionado y es el uso y el acceso a la tierra. Acá tenemos una situación muy compleja y en el país se está discutiendo, digamos, las estrategias y los mecanismos, pero es un elemento fundamental, es porque muchos de los campesinos que viven en nuestros territorios no son dueños de sus propias tierras, los han ocupado, los han usado históricamente y hay una figura de posesión de estos territorios, pero formalmente no está legalizada su tierra. Y eso es un conflicto que se genera porque al interior de áreas protegidas no se puede hacer esa titulación y eso nos lleva a que sea, digamos, un factor determinante para garantizar, digamos, y que sea una mirada que se ve a nivel global sobre el tema de la restauración y los conflictos que se pueden generar relacionados a eso. Lo otro que vemos importante es, teniendo en cuenta sus contextos sociales, es que se integren, obviamente, y que se consideren indicadores sociales mucho más robustos para evaluar los impactos que la restauración ecológica genera, digamos, en las comunidades locales. Nosotros hemos hecho varios desarrollos, pero consideramos que es una necesidad y una urgencia que podamos medir y evaluar claramente cómo impactamos sobre esos componentes sociales. Lo otro, y pues ya lo mencioné en un momento, pero es una necesidad de que se integren o que se fortalezca, digamos, la participación tanto de jóvenes como de mujeres. Digamos, el enfoque de género es primordial en el abordaje de las iniciativas de restauración. Creo que ya hay muchas iniciativas en el mundo que lo están desarrollando, pero creo que es un llamado a que ese sea un factor determinante para garantizar los procesos. Y por último, obviamente, pues todo el fortalecimiento de estos procesos que se fortalecen a partir de las iniciativas económicas que se desprenden. ¿Qué capacidades necesitamos? A pesar de que hay un gran avance en el conocimiento de la biodiversidad, nos falta explorar muchísimo. Somos realmente uno de esos países megadiversos que requiere, digamos, conocer mucho más su riqueza y potencializar los usos que se desprenden de ellos. Lo otro es que para nosotros fundamental es el incluir las ciencias sociales en la restauración ecológica, sobre todo en un contexto como el que les hemos mostrado de Colombia. No podríamos hablar de restauración ecológica sin hablar primero de restaurar el relacionamiento hombre-naturaleza y el relacionamiento entre las mismas seres, las mismas personas, ¿sí? Y lo otro es pues en el trabajar y el promover todas las herramientas para obviamente hacer acciones sin daño y sobre todo en el marco de estas áreas que tienen estas conflictividades o estas situaciones de conflicto en los territorios. Siguiente. Bueno, y ya para terminar, digamos, los pasos que están pendientes para nosotros, pues está obviamente todo lo que hemos venido hablando de desarrollar esa estrategia de paz con la naturaleza y esa necesidad de hacer un escalonamiento, digamos, hemos abordado y como les decía Betso al comienzo, hemos trabajado con más de 230 familias, pero la situación realmente en Colombia es muy grave y se necesita abordar muchísimas familias que están bajo estas condiciones. Estamos hablando de que son demasiadas familias y requerimos hacer un escalonamiento de estos procesos a partir de los aprendizajes que hemos logrado, digamos, en los diferentes procesos que llevamos con WWF. Y ya por último, Beth, te daría otra vez la palabra para que des
No,
esa última
tranquilo, termina
respuesta del
porque ya
llamado.
estamos fuera del tiempo.
Ok, pues digamos para cerrar, pues este último sí es el llamado es obviamente a mirar todas esas estrategias que permitan la sostenibilidad de la restauración y que obviamente pues se fortalezcan, digamos, los procesos de la restauración ecológica, no solamente mirando desde esa mirada ecológica, sino como lo decíamos, desde esa mirada que integre el componente social. Dejaría por ahí. Muchas gracias.
invite you to the panel now as well. We are very happy to have you. As we said, we want to make sense, what we are hearing. And let me introduce you to two of you briefly so that our audience also knows why we invited the two of you to take this role. Kennedy is a research associate for sustainable landscape governance at CIFRICRAF. He focuses on ecosystem-based adaptation and specifically passionate about community-led innovations. I think there was a lot of input from both perspectives. So look forward to hearing your points, Kennedy. And we have our second panelist, Horst Freiberg, who is a restoration expert, former head of the Forest Division at the BMUV. Horst is also considered the father of the Bone Challenge, which is quite a beautiful title, if I may say, a global effort to bring 150 million hectares of the world's deforested and degraded land into restoration by 2020 and 350 million by 2030. Horst and Kennedy, we asked, this open space for you to be part of so that you can really, voice what we heard in synthesized form. May I ask now, maybe in 10, 15 minutes, what is standing up for you from the presentations you've heard?
I go first. So I think I was muted.
Yes, thank you. First, I think you are muted. That's why we're not able to hear you right now. Yes.
Oh yeah, sorry. I'm sorry to the audience. I was on mute, so this was my fault. So hello again to everybody, to the audience. Thank you again for the introduction. Yes, and as I am expected to start first, and then Kennedy, and we may exchange. So I think we have heard of three very interesting projects. One, agriculture. Change in the behavior of managing agricultural land, but also on protected areas, the last one, and the second from Guatemala on watershed management. I think all the three projects, one is always changing minds and behavior. From the three countries from Latin America, Colombia, Paraguay, Argentina, Ecuador, Peru, it's mostly on changing behavior, on how to manage and use agriculture in a regenerative way. It's quite difficult, I could imagine, to change behaviors of farmers who have trained that over decades into something which is more sustainable, more regenerative, rehabilitative. So my question would be to the project presenters, Raphael, on this. What kind of farmers have you included? Big farmers or also small farmers? What is their experience? What is their expectation? Everybody from the three projects, in my perception, expects a reward, a benefit, an economic benefit, besides the ecological benefit. This is also due, I think, to the Guatemalan project on watershed management in the sprint there. Of course, watershed and flooding is something which happens because something has changed dramatically in the environment. So with heavy rainfalls, this community and these families have been affected by heavy floods. So, and they are, of course, interested in stopping these floods because these flooding actions really destroy their living area. So, but also they said there is an interesting, the community is practically aware about it. They are doing things. They are trying to find new ways in creating new young trees and nurseries, etc., to restore the areas. But also, what was quite interesting was there was at the beginning there was governmental interest in that activity, and then the community felt there is no interest anymore, and they became a bit not frustrated, but something like, we do not see that there is from outside an interest in what we are doing. So this was also something similar, and I would like to know from Juan Andres from Guatemala as well. What is your approach in maintaining the enthusiasm by these families from your region? And the third thing, protected areas, is of course a complicated thing between conflicts and of course an economic, ecological approach, where those families living in these protected areas would like to see, of course, why are we expected to change our behavior? What is our benefit? What is the reward? So one reward was quite interesting was we introduced not only trees, we have also non-timber forest trees. So something in addition to what we have already on board, we try to find new ways in getting new species, new products created, established in the area where we live, which at the end of the day, and this is an interesting concept, of course, as well, we try to open new markets for these products, which at the end of the day will increase our income and improve our livelihood. Quite interesting approach, which I would like to find also a question or see a question to our presenters from Colombia. Do you have already these market access activities in place? Have you new products which you have already found? And what you said is quite interesting and important, restoring not only the ecosystem, but also restoring, and this I think is very important, the trust of the community, the trust of people into what they expect to get from their new engagement. And I think the overall topic is time of all those projects which work together with people, with communities. Projects are not finished in 1, 2, 3 years. It's the time which goes over 10, 20 years and longer. Thank you very much. And I think Kennedy will also have some observation points.
Thank you very much, Horst. Kennedy, in the meantime, maybe I ask Juan Andres and Juan Francisco to be on hold to join us any moment, taking note of Horst's questions. Thank you very much, Kennedy.
Thanks, Elise, and also thanks, Horst, for starting us very well. I think there have been quite a lot of lessons also to learn, the cross-sharing from the different projects that have been presented. So thanks so much, Rafael, Juan, Beth, and Francisco for the great points and great interventions that you have already. I think as I listen to the presentation, as I think around it, I mean, there are about 5 things that I imagine, I mean, from my side as I listen to this presentation. And one of the things is there's quite a lot of investment that is being showcased about how we are using technologies and science in order to ensure that restoration is working and happening at scale. But I'm also interested to know the place and the role for the local and indigenous knowledge in all these. How are we blending also the local expertise and knowledge that we have? Because traditionally, these are the people who have been involved in these ecosystem. They have worked in this ecosystem. They have lived within the ecosystems. How are you also ensuring that we also including the traditional knowledge and expertise as you talk about the restoration? So I think that's one of the things that is emerging from my side. The second one is the whole issue about the co-management strategies. I mean, I have had a mention about the issue about involvement of the government in terms of the policies, strategies, and all those things. And the question is whether you also try to test a co-management approach whereby the community can also be given the rights to use and manage these the ecosystems in a way that they are also benefiting from the restoration. From experience also, we've seen a lot of good work by the communities who have been given the community forest, the community protected areas to manage them in a way that they can benefit from them, but also they use it sustainably. So maybe you could also share, from experience in terms of how is co-management of natural resources working in some of the areas that you are in, to what extent also you're involving the government institutions, be it the national government or the local and regional government, in terms of ensuring that even as we talk about restoring and managing and conserving, that also these people who are within these areas also benefiting from these resources. That part that I think also came out clearly was about the issues about financing. I think financing has been an issue in so many of the interventions that we are doing, the project we're doing. And one of the points that was raised was about the private sector financing. And I think maybe it could also be good to hear from the presenters. Beyond IKI project, how well have they also tried to tap into the private sector financing? Just to put it into a bit of a context, every year the UNEP publishes what we call the adaptation report gap. Last year in 2022, they summarized it. They summarized the financing landscape as having too little investment and too slow in terms of funding. This month in November, they have released the 2023 adaptation gap report, and how they have been they are defining this sector is that it's facing other financing and other preparedness in terms of helping people and cushioning them from climate change issues through financing. And what they are saying is that we are having like a shortage of about 307 billions every year. So there's need to bring the private sector into the discussion. And my question is, beyond the IKI funding from the Germany, how else are they also trying to involve the local institutions, national institutions, international institutions in terms of ensuring that we have continuous funding even from the private sector in a way that they can the private sector can also benefit. I think more things, and one of them is about representation. I think there was a mention about having women representation. I think was mentioned as one of the key challenges, but also to expand this, also to include other interest groups such as the youth, indigenous communities, people with a disability. So I think it could also be, I would also be happy to hear from the presenters how well they have, if they have some sort of existing models that they are using also to ensure that we are putting all the stakeholders into the picture when it comes to the restoration. I think they've been mentioned about one of the projects cutting across 5 countries, and maybe it would be good to hear in terms of the representation models, which models are probably working in some of these countries that could be used as case studies also by other projects in terms of ensuring that we have adequate representation. And maybe the last point is basically just to hear and understand how also, beyond working in these nations, how also we are also connecting to the global conversations. I think House has been described as the father of the bond challenge. And we've had a mention even from the first presenter about the goal that has been set by the bond challenge, but also at regional level, we have initiative 20 by 20, which also seeks to restore about 20 million hectares of degraded lands by 2020. Also in Africa, I think the next session is focusing more on Africa. We have the African Forest Landscapes Restoration Initiative, or AFR 100, which is also targeting about restoring about 100 million hectares by 2030. And maybe just to hear from the presenters and from their projects, are they also trying to link up to the regional sort of restoration challenges that we have? Are they also trying to link up to the global restoration challenges? How are they able to get to a point where they could monitor and say that our contribution to these global initiatives is a given number of hectares? So I think those are some of the few sort of feedback that I'm having from the presenters, but also to say thank you.
Juan Andres or Juan Francisco, or Beth, if you have very brief, very brief, maybe like some key points that you want to respond to Horst or Kennedy, because we have the chat function. By the way, there is an incredibly live chat going on with everyone joining to the call, which is really exciting to see, and everyone is already sharing experiences there. So it's many layers. I will ask Beth, Juan Andres, and Juan Francisco to further elaborate on the questions Horst and Kennedy asked in the chat, but maybe 1 minute if you would like to, you know, comment something that was asked to you by Horst or Kennedy. Oh, I see Raphael is also here still with us. Oh, Raphael, wonderful. Can we go through 1 minute per project, if I may ask?
Okay, ¿arranco yo o
Juan
cómo
Francisco,
vas a
you
hacer?
can start first.
Ok, pues dos de las preguntas que alcancé a recoger y para hacer uno relacionado a los productos, los mercados y las necesidades. Para nosotros es una necesidad que cuando metemos a las comunidades en el desarrollo de una iniciativa, esto tenga de alguna manera un mercado y una posibilidad de comercialización, ¿sí? Tenemos especies con mucho potencial, pero tenemos otras que hemos filtrado para poder garantizar que en lo que las comunidades entren a trabajar ya haya la posibilidad de hacer esas alianzas, acercamientos y posibilidad de desarrollar para que esto no se quede en proyecciones, sino algo concreto. Y lo otro, la otra pregunta que hacían, que me parece muy importante, está relacionado a cómo hacer que las comunidades hacen parte de los procesos. Nosotros tenemos como unos principios que hablamos de reconocer y conocer el territorio, y eso lo hacemos de la mano con la gente, que la gente misma, por su conocimiento ancestral o tradicional, sabe que hay unas especies que se tenían algunos usos. Ese conocimiento local para nosotros hay que traerlo y combinarlo con la ciencia, con otro nivel de conocimiento para que haya una articulación de ese saber local y el saber, digamos, que desarrolla la academia, y que esos dos se integren en beneficio de la restauración.
Thank you very much, Juan Francisco. May I suggest that we move to the other two projects also to share their brief remarks about the points that was addressed to them. Juan Andres, would you like to go next?
Sí, muchas gracias. Tal vez tratando de resumir, algo clave para nuestro proyecto ha sido que nosotros ya llevamos más de 10 años trabajando con esta comunidad. Entonces, ese seguimiento pues ha sido clave, ¿verdad? Y a pesar de que el gobierno pues tiene rotación en temas de política, pero nosotros hemos sido constantes, ¿verdad? Tratando de dar esa asesoría, ese acompañamiento y gestionando diferentes apoyos para la comunidad, ¿verdad? Entonces eso nos ha ayudado a construir un proceso a largo plazo, ¿verdad? Y pues ese seguimiento y motivación de las comunidades, ¿verdad? Como comentaba también, se toma en cuenta lo que ellos piensan, ellos son los que conviven con ese bosque, las especies ellos las eligieron, se colectó regeneración natural de la zona para hacer la restauración, eso lo hicieron las mujeres, ¿verdad? O sea, ha sido un proyecto bastante participativo y todos los actores hemos sumado a esa participación comunitaria. Como lo mencioné, es clave esa participación en la temporalidad y en la sostenibilidad de ese tipo de proyectos. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Juan Andres. I see that Raphael is still with us from the car, so appreciative of your time, Raphael. Would you like to, there were also a question addressed to you. Would you like to respond?
Yes, I just parked now. Thank you very much. You make a lot of questions within one question, but I'm going to address one that is like the local knowledge. And we address that by not basing our regenerative agriculture and ranching in practices. We're not based on practices, but in outputs, like increased biodiversity, increased soil health, and also in good management of water. And to get to these outcomes is very different if you are in a cattle ranching in Orinoquia or if you're in a cocoa farm in the coast of Ecuador. So we do not since the project is so big and so diverse in many, we do not base our interventions mainly in practices, but more in these outcomes with, of course, with certain principles. Now we have a, and the other thing is the financing. We are aiming to a systemic change. So we have like 5 components in the project. One is, of course, an impact network or platform. The other one, as I told you, was the knowledge, and this knowledge includes the finance part, but we have one outcome that is business models. So we design and try and prove some pilots of business models for this to have this rationality and public policy. And of course, these business models are accompanied with a private financing component that is help the private finance sector to develop the instruments, the adequate instruments in each country or value chain to finance this transition to a more regenerative agriculture that in the end will restore the landscape. So that's it.
Thank you very much, Rafael. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Horst, Kennedy, are we good for this round to wrap up with the interventions of also our presenters? Because we have 2 more presenters to come up. Thank you so much for this moment, but we'll be having you back on the screen shortly. As we move on, we want to take a moment to launch a poll to the audience. We would like to ask, you know, in this call, there's such valuable knowledge already available on restoration, but I'm going to kind of like put a restoration question in a poll format just to tease out a little bit. So if we can launch the question for our audience, my colleagues are going to just help. I would like you to choose the question, the response that you see the right one. It should be popping up in your screen any moment. And I think it was addressed in many ways. So the question is, what are the 3 main types of actors involved in restoration funding? Government, corporates, and local communities, public funders, private investors, and civil society organizations, non-profit organizations, academic institutions, and international NGOs, local environmental funds, development partners, and small grants programs. So you can start voting, and I'm just going to give a couple of seconds for everyone to read and vote themselves. Okay. Are we good with the responses? Shall we launch the response? My team can help us to see the responses. Yeah, I think we are going to get the responses any moment. All right, the correct response in this case was public funders, private investors, and civil society organizations. And of course, around these questions, we can have, you know, conversations. These are really we wanted to bring up a question to tease your curiosity into looking more into knowledge around the restoration. And we would like to refer to you a knowledge resource that guided us to create this question, this poll question for you around funding options for ecosystem restoration in Central America and Africa. And you can also find in the chat shared about this knowledge product from GLF's Knowledge Hub. You can also scan the QR. So this was a report that was created by GIZ and UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. So feel free to look into more. I hope that this is going to get your more interest to GLF social channels and Knowledge Hub, where we share so much more of this. Going to another form of knowledge sharing, I would like to now invite one of our GLFX chapters on the screens to share about their work. We had a great conference in GLF Nairobi 2023 last month, and we are still breathing that excitement from the conference. Monica Yator, who was also at the conference, shared a piece of interview with us from GLFX Baringo chapter. Monica presents her organization's projects, which are aimed at advocating and promoting agroecology and permaculture innovations. Please, let's have Monica's interview.
My name is Monica Yator. I am the founder and executive director, Indigenous Women and Girls Initiative. I'm also the team leader, GLFX Baringo. And to say more about what we are doing is we are advocating and promoting agroecology and permaculture innovations to support indigenous peoples. Those are the pastoralists, hunters and gatherers, and also fisher folks in Baringo County. And we are going beyond Baringo to Samburu and other indigenous counties. Our project initially is to do a farm demonstration in support of agroecology and also to support pastoralist community to have alternatives to livelihood and also bring integrate agroecology and agroforestry to ensure that even the pastoralist community are aware that they can build their livelihood back after this COVID-19 and also after this climate shocks that has ravaged their livelihood in Baringo County. So if we're given a chance to advance our work, we will reach out to more pastoralist communities and also bring the intergenerational knowledge transfer. We work with pupils to understand that we have to grow food and also our pastoralist community to understand that crop farming and livestock keeping can be a way of livelihood and also bring that to a restoration initiative in our county. So support our idea and let us build back our arid and semi-arid areas to be food secure in the initiative of food forest in indigenous communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monica. For those of you who are curious to follow some of these conversations, interviews, please feel free to go to GLF's website. You're able to access all of the sessions still from the conference, so feel free to take the opportunity for that. Moving on, as we said, we are going to have presentations from Latin America and the Caribbean, and then after from Africa. So we have two presenters who are waiting for us from Africa. One of them who is going to present next is Lewis Sirikwa, and Lewis is the co-founder of Siriops Environmental Research Organization, and he is also GLF's Ocean Restoration Steward for 2023. Lewis, it's great to have you. I think you are in Thailand presenting your project there as well, if I'm not mistaken. We're listening to you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy and excited to be here. As we have been told, my name is Levi Sirikwa, and I'm an Ocean Restoration Steward. So with Siriops, we're a team of young people, and the initiative that we have is Greening the Blue initiative. Basically, you can go to the next slide. Basically, this is about growing the forest, converting the mangrove restoration activity into an art. We know that the mangrove ecosystem makes just 0.1% of the cover in the world, and yet it's very instrumental when it comes to carbon oxide sequestration. So we have our main role is to ensure that the community and everyone who works with us takes it as an art on our way towards climate justice. So we grow the forest. When we are thinking about mangrove restoration, we are thinking about the entire life of that tree. So that is our main approach. The other thing is we focus on integration of indigenous knowledge, which we realize that is very valuable, and science, to be able to bring a synergy and ensure that the product that comes out is very refined and it's it's yielding results. So the last thing about our art is that we mimic nature. We don't just go carry trees and we go and plant. We are keen to understand how is the forest responding to our initiatives. If it's positive, then we know we're on the right track. If it's negative, then we apply adaptive management mechanism, and that has always ensured that most of our forests that we have planted have had greater growth performance and higher survival. For example, as per now, we have restored approximately 300 hectares that we can be able to account so far since we started. Next slide. So the first part is capacity strengthening, and capacity is on both ends. You'll find that we have the side of science and you have the side of the community. So the side of science, there are things that they don't know on the ground, and the side of the community, there are technical aspects that they don't know. So when we integrate this, we are having like a double-edged approach where we have the scientists are being empowered and the communities are being empowered. That means that when we are taking up a restoration activity, we allocate the roles of the community, focusing on the roles that they're very strong at, and we allocate the roles to the scientists, people who are fresh graduates, who have come from school, to the things that the community cannot do, but they're very essential and they're very important. And in the process, we do together. In the process, you realize that we have efficient knowledge transfer, and everyone is learning. So that is the roles. We so far, the progress is that we've been able to enhance independence. It means that even when we are not there, the community can do the basic things in mangrove restoration by themselves. The community that we've worked with can be able to do some things that scientists can do, and that is our roles. The other aspect, the thorn is resource limitation and duplication of roles within the scope of area of operation. You find that because we don't have a centralized means of communication, a person will come and do a capacity building training, maybe this month or this year, and another team will come and do the same thing that year, and that now brings about no progress. So that's a challenge that we have faced, and we are slowly strategically collaborating with Kenya Forest Service to ensure that there's a streamlined way of communication, their expectations and their targets, so that if we have partner coming on board, they know exactly the gaps, and then they align themselves to those gaps. When they do that, then it's very easy for progress to be made. On the other aspect is limited capacity in mangrove species diversification. If you are familiar with mangrove restoration, you might realize, even in the second picture here, you might realize that we are experiencing intensification of monocropping, just restoring one species, and that is not like it's not ecologically sound. So there's need for us to diversify the mangrove species we are able to pot at the nursery, hence have a complex ecosystem being restored that will optimize the ecological functions that we'll get from the ecosystem. So the part that we're having here is to incorporate research on how we are going to add more species at the nursery phase. We are working on that to continue mobilize resources, seeking opportunities like in private partnership funding mechanism, like looking at how companies can be able to support mangrove restoration through their obligation to to the community, and then support enabling investments for bankable projects. As you can see here, we have a jar of honey with some mangrove propagules and seeds. So this is just a means to work together with partners to ensure that there's high valuation of resources that are rich and come from the mangrove ecosystem. They explore the value addition of mangrove honey, for instance. Next slide. So on monitoring, like I had mentioned, we focus on growing the forest. So if we want to grow the forest, then we need to be able to monitor that. So we have been able to use GIS technologies and even support the community from the ground to be able to do the basic things like mapping, and that has been a success so far. The thorn has been lack of a centralized database, as I had mentioned, and duplication of roles. Then the bad is that this is providing us with the opportunities to be able to design and come up with a centralized database that can be used at a regional scale. Next slide. So what kind of enabling factors do you see in the global registration? For me, I would say bankable project that will inspire people to continue restoring and protect the environment. What capacities are needed to accelerate this? Both training and genuine innovative hubs to ensure that innovation is captured and nurtured to create change. Next slide. The other part is continuing on the capacity building. So emphasis on enabling investment as a means to pave way for the next phase of conservation of mangrove ecosystem. Then just a recap, technical, professional, and financial support is very critical and crucial for the marginalized coastal community groups as an avenue to restore the degraded mangrove ecosystem. So my parting words will be, if we think of value, then we won't be worried of if we think of value, we will not be worried of loss or waste in the aspect of restoration. So always think of value, then waste will be taken care of. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lewis, for sharing your presentation with us. I am grateful that I was able to see your project actually in person, and honored to contribute to plantation as well. So really makes a difference when you see projects firsthand. We have a second and final project from Africa before we call Horst and Kennedy back. Mawa Karambiri, who is going to present next, she actually shared a recording with us. Mawa is Policy and Technical Engagement Specialist for the Sahel at Siforicraft, Burkina Faso. She shared a recording of her presentation that will talk about the Regreening Africa project. Let's get her video.
Hello, my name is Mawa Karambiri, and I'm delighted to share with you insights on the Regreening Africa program on behalf of the team. The Regreening Africa program was funded by the European Union, implemented by ICRAF and partners, including World Vision, Sahel Eco, CRS, CARE, Oxfam, GIZ, in 8 African countries, including 4 in West Africa and 4 in East Africa, are shown on the map. The program aimed to restore 1 million hectares of degraded land to improve the livelihoods, food security, and resilience of 500,000 households through incorporating trees into croplands, communal lands, and pastoral areas, with complementary sustainable land management practices, value chain development, and policy advocacy. By January 2023, 607,000 plus households and 954,000 plus hectares were reached. 65% of the households adopting new regreening practices. In terms of monitoring impact, what has really worked well is the use of citizen science in data collection. We engaged farmers, local leaders, and youth to engage with collecting data over the restoration proceedings. This citizen science was implemented through the use of the Regreening Africa app. And by January 2023, we have over 200,000 farmers that are registered and that are helping collect the data. Those data are stored on the dashboard for unity and for more synergies on between the data coming from different sources. Also, the use of land degradation surveillance framework has worked quite well to monitor land health at high accuracy. Also, a household survey at baseline, endline, and uptake survey were also successfully used for socioeconomic indicators monitoring. Also, the joint reflective and learning missions were developed and successfully used to bring together knowledge for iterative and adaptive management. In terms of thorns, many ecological and livelihood impacts take time. We all know that. And monitoring them over a long period in the restoration sites is needed, but challenging and often absent. In addition, involving the community to track change and inform their future decision is also challenging. In terms of birds, we think of enhancing the regreening app to share information back with the communities through the advisory services in order for monitoring and access to information be in synergy and combined. In terms of insights from the ground, what kind of factors are enabling global restoration? We have quite a number of points. First, matching practices to current and future local contexts is critical. Working through local structures and processes, addressing the drivers and incentives for land restoration, including policy and enterprises. Integrating science and evidence is critical to magnify impact. Also, strengthening partnership and inclusion is instrumental for the success of land restoration. In terms of capacity needed, technical capacities in restoration approaches and practices by context, monitoring capacities at multi-level, policy advocacy and engagement, value chains and enterprise development, iterative and adaptive management and evidence integration, combining multiple methodologies to access land degradation, and better plan for restoration intervention. Also important is gender transformative approaches and youth integration. The next milestone for our restoration initiative is to build on the lessons learned from the phase 1 to develop a phase 2 of the Regreening Africa program. And also critical is the linkage to the Great Green Wall and scaling of the Great Green Wall initiative. The call for actions. We believe that large-scale restoration is possible with strong partnership and by matching practices and approaches to local contexts. Also, bringing science, evidence, and monitoring to the global and local restoration agendas accelerate impact on the ground. And finally, value chains with equitable economic benefits and policies that support and enable environments are critical incentives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mawa. Wonderful. We are at the end of our presentations for today. And I hope that you can see the multi-layering of learning space that we're working towards here. And I saw that some people in the chat asked if they could get the presentations. Yes, we will be sharing those with you. If you registered via email, I'm sure we can arrange with our team for that to arrive to you. Now, Horst and Kennedy, may I ask you to join me on this digital stage for an intervention around the two projects that we heard from. We also have Lewis in the online, if you would like to share. And we have about 10 minutes to wrap up this part of the program. May I ask that we start with one of you and then move to the other? Would any of you want to go first?
Yeah, okay. Shall I?
Go for it.
Okay. So no, thank you very much for these two presentations. Mangroves and regreening Africa are two, complete different ecosystems, of course. A question to Louis, very interesting mangrove restoration and rehabilitation. I catch the word mimic nature. This is quite interesting to listen that you mimic nature in order to, get your mangroves planted and grown, and you have communities involved, which, of course, know how important mangroves are. You said a little bit about you have different mangrove species which you plant, and you said that you have a diversification in your nursery phase. Could you explain a little bit in a few words? How many species of mangroves do you really plant, and what different soils are you do you use for planting? And the third thing, only to give a slight look into bankable projects, is quite interesting, of course. But do you have already one in place, or are you looking for bankable projects or options to get them established? Thank you very much. And more to regreening Africa, quite interesting, of course. Farmer managed landscape natural restoration is important. You said 1 million hectares you reached in your 6 years project or 5-year project time, more or less 950,000 hectares. 65 households adopted already the concept. I could imagine that this is quite at least knowing how this works and what change this approach can show within 2-3 years of application is something which impresses people. One question to you is, was it one single area or are these different areas? A second, which is of course quite interesting for me, is the families and communities which work with you. You said a little bit about monitoring, tracking the changes, and you have these constraints with your databases, etc., mapping. Are you mapping these areas where you say here is the regreening effort has taken place, and we monitor that this continues? How are you doing that in practice, or is that something which you plan for your second phase? And of course, what is important also to people, not only the value chains, which you have presented. I think value chains are important for families. So to get, in addition to what they have already there, getting new additional funding, income. Could you say what is it in specific? And of course, it's also, I think, an ecological benefit from these from these natural regenerated areas, which of course those people who live there see as a great benefit. So these are my questions to both presenters. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Horst. If I may, Kennedy, I'm going to come to you just in a moment. Horst, I think we will pass the questions to Mawa, as she couldn't join live to our event today, as she came from a very long trip actually. But I think the questions that you raise is already an opportunity to gain insights around, what critical issues to focus on for the wider audience that we have here. But we have Livis on the stage. Livis, do you want to take a short moment to respond to Horst, and then we're going to move to Kennedy to also get his insights around the presentations.
Thank you very much. I'll start with the second question. Yes, we have bankable projects in place. The first question about species, we have in a mangrove ecosystem, the ecosystem is zoned. So when you look at the Kenyan coast of most of the degraded parts, they're the outer zones, the zones that are neighboring the terrestrial land. So the species that we are restoring, there are only 4 species. We have 9 species in Kenya, and the 3 species that we want to introduce, they are species that are adapted to the outer areas that are being avoided at the moment. So you find that these species are almost adapted to the terrestrial environment, while the species that are being restored are the ones that are adapted to the inner side. Yeah. So, and the larger percentage of degradation is the degradation that is outward. The inner side can actually restore by itself. It can undergo natural regeneration. So technically, we could be like using resources where we are not supposed to be using. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Lewis. Kennedy, these 2 projects are much closer to you geographically speaking. What would be your comments around what you heard?
Thanks so much. I think it's always good to hear what is happening within your country, Kenya. And thanks, Lewis, for that. Also, Mawa and Regreening Africa is actually, ICRAF is one of the partners. It's also very good, hearing from those projects. And also just I don't know whether to compare to contrast them. I think we're moving from a small to medium scale kind of a project to, on the mangrove side, to a large scale sort of a project. I think it could have been good also to hear from Mawa if she was in the call. How do you manage such a large scale project with multiple, stakeholders and partners across different regions? But I think also from Levi, I think one of the good thing about both projects that they integrated both, the technology and also the local knowledge. And one of the things that I think I've heard from Lewis, which was also caught my attention, is in terms of the value system. Maybe just to hear from you, when you talk about the value, you're looking for the value from which perspective? Because sometimes what the communities who are within the mangroves area look when they talk about the value system, sometimes is a bit different from what maybe the government can look. And I'm coming from perspective that we have a project that we're also doing in Gambia and Ghana. The reason one of the key drivers of degradation has been that the communities there do not value some of the mangrove species, such as the white mangrove, as much as the red mangrove species. So what they're doing is that they are cutting mangrove species, for their short-term livelihood benefits. But when where they are doing the red mangrove, the reservoir species, they are reselling them because they are seeing the benefit in terms of the attachment of OSs among other biodiversity issues. So maybe just to hear from me, in terms of the value systems, how are you ensuring that you have a common understanding on the value of different species and how you are ensuring that people don't conserve one species at the expense of the other? And maybe also just to hear from you, we also have the Great Blue Wall project that is taking place within the coastal area, I think in 11 countries. I don't know whether you have any connection with the Great Blue Wall project and how maybe are you also contributing to its a broader goal of conserving the coastal areas, across 11 countries. Thanks.
Thank you very much. For the Great Blue project, I don't yet have information. Mm-hmm. To the other aspect is the slogan that we are passing over is that a mangrove tree is more useful alive than dead. That is the principle to begin with, because you just calculate the economics. It takes you few seconds to cut down a tree. And even if we went to one of the sites, a community restored mangrove trees like 15 years ago, that tree is just like maximum 2.5 tall, 15 years. So when you cut, it will take a lot of time to regenerate. That's one thing you're telling the community. And already the community also know the benefits, because even if you go to the community, they will tell you, we are conserving the mangroves because we know at a specific time we can harvest shrimps from the mangroves, the Paneas indica shrimps. We can increase the catch per unit effort of fish. So they already linking the ecological goods and services from the mangroves from other things. The other thing that I'm emphasizing on value is, like, specifically on the bankable project, is the honey value chain. You realize that the mangrove honey has one of the highest medicinal value, but this is an opportunity that has not been tapped. So what if we explore the value chain of this honey and the bee products that come from the honey? And just from the scientific perspective, imagine if we have so many hives, so many bees in the forest. Pollination is a lot. Ecological restoration is happening, and no one will want to be stung by bees trying to cut the mangrove. The mangrove, you're stuck in mud, and you have a swarm of bees over you. So it's like a natural protection, and it takes care of so many things. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lewis. I know that this conversation is very interesting. And of course, as we dive into it, it gets only more interesting. I am very appreciative of Kennedy and Horst, your time, active listening. Sense making is really the most important, part of learning process. So I think you greatly helped with the prompting questions and commentary on the projects. And I'm thankful to all our project presenters. We have come to the end of this segment of the program. We have a plenary panel waiting for us. So without further ado, I would like to invite my colleague, Isabel Mesquita, our Latin American regional coordinator, who is going to be moderating this panel, this plenary. And in this plenary, as I hinted at the start, we focused on quite a lot of focus areas. And now we want to move our direction to policy advocacy and restoration funding, as these two are really areas that make or break many things when it comes to restoration efforts. So we will have our guest to give the focus on this topic right now. And Isabel, may I have you on the stage? And Isabel is also going to introduce us our panel. We're listening to you.
Thank you, Yelis. Thank you all for being here. I'm honored to moderate this plenary, as we have two special speakers with us today. We have Gabriela Gavarrete, a biologist who currently coordinates the Suma Un Bosque project in El Pulmón, Mass. She's also a secretary of the Mesoamerican Society for Biology and Conservation for the El Salvador chapter. Gabriela's leadership and experience in the planning, management, and implementation of restoration projects brought her to the GLF's Restoration Stewards Program in 2022, a program dedicated to support and increase the work of outstanding young restoration practitioners as herself. We are also pleased to have Dr. Renee Zamora Cristales, Senior Manager Restoration Policy at the World Resources Institute and Coordinator of Initiative 2020, one of the most important regional initiatives to restore areas in Latin America. Besides his role in the World Resources Institute, Renee has also a relevant research work with more than 30 publications in scientific journals on topics related to economics, public incentives, and landscape monitoring. As a recognition of his research, he received the Outstanding Doctoral Research Award in 2019. Welcome, Renee and Gabriela, and thank you so much for joining us today. To kick off our conversation, I would like to ask you to share a brief overview of the context of restoration action at different levels. Firstly, I'd like to invite Renee to talk about how restoration initiatives are framed at a global and regional level. Renee, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Isabel. Thank you, Gabriela and Jelis for the invitation to this and all of you to be here. No, we know that there are many competing things happening in the virtual world and just having your time here, your attention is really valuable and we hope to send you some messages that we have learned through the years in restoration. Just very quick an overview, you know, what we have been experiencing in Latin America and Initiative 20 by 20. We are working on restoration. The targets set by the countries are around 53 million hectares in landscapes to be restored by 2030. And that's a big target, no? But we have other initiatives that are also being very aligned to these goals. One of them is, of course, the coming Montreal targets that call for restoration of 30% of the degraded lands. And that really highlights the importance of restoration, not only for as a driver to reduce deforestation, but also to restore the land that we have been working through the years, no? So that's the overview more on that. In Africa, of course, we have FR 100, the sister initiative of 20 by 20, and we have also efforts in Asia, no? And all of these efforts are supporting NDCs, and of course, these CBD biodiversity targets that I mentioned that are very important and are highlighting these efforts. So this is my introduction and overview. Back to you, Isabel.
Thank you, Rene. Gabriela, from a local perspective, what opportunities do you see to boost on-the-ground restoration actions within your context?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting us. For us, it's an honor. Well, for me, it's an honor to share this panel with Dr. Rene and also with you, Isabel, with GLF. For a big I'm going to have a big context on this question because opportunities, there's a lot of opportunities. As a young restoration practitioners, we like to share these opportunities with the other young people that are working on this. And there are many mechanisms to finance restoration projects. They can be public, they can be private, they can go directly to civil society as we are the civil society, as Un Pulmón Más, and in many forms. I mean, in form of grants, loans, incentives, and each of them have different operational forms. And one of the main funding opportunities that we have, I mean, globally to act local is the carbon market. Currently, there are many international institutions that have several ways to finance some key areas for carbon sequestration with different ways to monitor the activities that are carried out in the ground, either in forestry or production systems. However, I think that often it's very hard for an international institution to corroborate whether it's really conserving or restoring the portions their funding, because sending delegates to monitor these areas is very expensive. So I really think that a very important way to fund projects, restoration projects on local level, can also have this incentive people, like local people, to explore another ways to restore. Should be not only about planting trees and maintaining them or just measure how many hectares we're restoring. We can approach the restoration as a very expensive and complex topic that have many approaches, including scientific research for young scientists that want to get involved with restoration projects. Also, it can be approached with food security, health, human rights, public policies, to all the people who wants to really have a change with the local governments. And these kind of projects can be sustainable and can be successful. And to enhance this kind of projects, we must know, like, what are the characteristics of our landscape? Because we are on the ground, we know the landscape, And we know how is the biodiversity, the ecosystem health, and the population. And based on that, we can set the goals that are really important to implement projects and look for a fund who can fit the goal that we already established and provide communities with resources to generate income that is sustainable with restoration process. So in my case, when I had the privilege to access to the fund that boosts my project and to the Restoration Steward program, I was very interested in this fund because it fit perfectly with my stage as a restoration agent, and I was still a student in this moment. So for me, it was really enhancing all my career and also all the impact that I wanted to do locally, because working with the local community was the main objective of my project, including then of the whole process and the activity that we made. And also we engage other institutions and as a local stakeholders like schools, churches, the firefighters also, the local government and many other institutes. So we had a WhatsApp chat where we communicate each other in case of an emergency. And also if we have any activity, we also communicate each other. So this is a real impact that we have local, because we thought that it encouraged the community, can make that they going to be together even if we are there on the ground or not. So this is like a very big content. I'm sorry that I talk a lot, but I really think that there's many approaches, very interesting approaches in restoration that we can talk in this discussion.
Thank you, Gabriela. I guess you brought a nice overview with many aspects, which is really interesting. And before going more deep into funding, I would like to hear from both of you some insights on policy advocacy interventions. So we are still in this context. And Gabriela, let me start with you. In the conduction of local restoration projects, what are the key themes that you think should be considered in terms of policy? If you can make it brief, I know it's a lot, but if you can just select one or two key themes, that would be great. Thanks.
Yes. Well, first, it's very important to know to establish a difference between a private area and a public area, because we have a different approach in a natural protected area that is managed by the state and the Ministry of Environment, and it's a different management than having a private area. For example, in my context, many of the public initiatives for climate change mitigation funds and restoration and or conservation of the biodiversity, I directed to the natural protected area, but these systems in many cases are fragmented in a small portion of forest, and there are other ecosystems that have a very importance to be a natural protected area. But mostly of the territory, for example, in El Salvador, is private. So the manage of these areas are very different, because they can be abandoned areas without any management, or they can be part of a big industry of monoculture or habitational projects. So these areas are also very important to work with. We have as a local government or a national initiative, we have to create a strategy to work with private and public sector. I mean, because in these areas also we have a lot of communities that doesn't have access to the land, and also they have all their sources to live in from these places. So how can we really assure that these people have all the resources that they need in a sustainable way? So as an agents, we have to prioritize the policies to work as an entire community of private sector, social society, and public sector. Because if we don't do this, we are not facing the reality of the land tenure of our territories and countries.
Thank you so much, Gabriela. Yes, definitely important to engage multiple stakeholders for any actions. Renee, we'd love to hear from your perspective as well. If you want to add anything regarding what Gabriela mentioned, feel free to do so. But we'd also like to hear about how Initiative 2020 and AFR 100, if you like to mention, how can those initiatives help accelerate restoration policy across levels? So please.
Yeah, no, thank you, Isabel. So I think, you know, I very more along the lines of what Gabriela was mentioning. You know, the land tenure is important. Who is in the territories, you know, who is in the landscapes, and who is how is the governance of the landscape is very important to understand, because then you can accrue the benefits and also the cost of restoration. We always ask who are the winners or who are the losers of restoration. No, if we ask a farmer to pay all the costs but don't receive all the benefits, then you have inequity there that we need to address. And policy is where it comes to play. In 20 by 20, and thanks to the support, in the initial support of the International Climate Initiative, no, IKI, and BMUB in Germany and the Luxembourg government, we were able to start working with countries, because you have all these restoration pledges that are numbers, no? And they use hectares as a unit, no? And hectares is not the most comprehensive unit to account for restoration, because restoration is more than area, no? So we needed plans. So we work with countries as an initiative with partners and the governments to start enabling these plans, national restoration plans. And in Latin America, most of the countries at this point have national restoration plans that design the roadmap of how to implement those commitments that started as a number. No? In Africa, it's happening the same. In many countries already have designed the plans through FR 100 of what they want to achieve and how they would like to achieve and what are the areas they want to restore. No. So there is a policy component there, but policy without teeth or without action is inactive, no? So right now we are working with public incentives, basically anything that can cause a change on behavior on the farmer or support the farmer to do the change we need in the landscape. It's an incentive we work. And we have in Latin America and now in Africa, landscape restoration policy program or facility that is supporting the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration too, that is looking at those incentives. Those incentives, the best we know are payment for ecosystem services, for example, that recognize you for the activity you do, will have a benefit to society and the government tries to pay you that benefit. But we are going beyond that. We are going to try to create incentives that can really get a business model out of your restoration activity. So you cannot, you can continue doing that without depending on the government or the incentive itself. No? So we are working a lot on incentives and public policy. I mean, we all heard that policy is very hard to change. For many it's boring, but realities we live in countries that have rules, no? And there is one component that is the enforcement, that is called the stick, no? And the carrots, no? So we're working on the carrots right now. You know, what are the things we can change that really incentivize people to do this change? And it's not all only money, no? It's not financial resources. It's also, you know, what are the things that move people to do action, no? And we work a lot with the countries to understand the perception from the locals. What, as Gabriela was saying, you know, they know what they want to achieve in the territories, and in many cases those objectives are not related to financial matters, are related to other things. It's like, you know, perceptions are like if you go to a restaurant, no, you might go. The rationality tells you that you're going to get the best food because you like the food in that restaurant. but you might go for other things. You might go because you like the people that gets there, you like the drinks, you like other aspects of the restaurant that are not necessarily related to the nature of the restaurant, which is providing food, no? And it's the same with restoration. You know, we do restoration maybe because we care about our children, or we care about water. It's not all financial, no? So we need to find incentives in policy that can benefit people that really want to do this change, and the ones that are hesitant to do this change, trying to find ways, entry points, so we can change that. With that, you know, we have been doing progress in Latin America and Africa. Still so much to be done. If you look at the deforestation stats compared to restoration, of course, you know, many countries have more forest cover laws, but that doesn't mean that restoration is not happening. It's happening, but it's a slow process, and that slow process is hidden in some cases, no? Also, we need to acknowledge that negative news sell more than positive news. So there are a lot of positive cases, but maybe the ones that are highlighted more are the negative ones. And I would like to point out, because in 20 by 20, we are making an effort to highlight these positive efforts, which are there, are happening in the landscapes that Gabriela is working and others. And we just need to give more visibility. Thank you.
Thank you, Renee. I really like the metaphor on the restaurant and to showcase the need of incentives that are diverse. So thank you for sharing that in such a clear way. And now, considering incentives, but also funding itself, I want to ask you some reflections on, based on your experience regarding funding mechanisms and other incentives. So if you have examples on funding mechanisms and other incentives that are successful in reaching local implementing partners that should be kept and replicated, which funding mechanisms do not achieve local partners, and what kind of funding mechanisms could be adapted in order to do so, because we know one of the main challenges is precisely for local projects and implementers to access public or private funding. So based in your experience, Gabriela, could you start by sharing any examples from the local implementers' perspective on funding mechanisms?
Sure. Well, as a young organization with Un Pulmón Más, I think we have, I don't know if it's lucky or we have like a big idea to create this organization and establish the organization legally. This is a resource that many organizations doesn't know that they have to establish legally to have more opportunities to get funding, because there are so many collectives in the civil society that they're not often very they're not legally established, but they are very organized and they have a very, very important initiatives. But these kinds of ways to get to these decisions with the organizations are also meant because there are people that doesn't know this kind of things to get access to a funding. And there are also many initiatives that they're not focused on have money or have a job or get funding for have more money. The real things that they want to achieve is a real restoration projects that are mainly from having a healthy environment to get the resources that we have a right to have. For example, a clean water or more food or more resources for their houses. The restoration projects from the collectives are not only focused on have more money, but in many cases, we as implementers, we need to have this kind of order in our organizations. So maybe we can just have some talks with the people to make sure that they have this information and they can just start this kind of process. Also, many funding opportunities are in other languages. For example, for me, well, my English obviously is not perfect, but I have this knowledge to see this funding. Also, I know that the GLF has improved this language to other languages in Latin America and all the world, so the people can get access to this fund. But there are many funding opportunities that are in another language, and language is a barrier. For example, for communities that have other languages, they don't have the access to these fundings. And also, it's very important to know that sometimes the local governments or the state in general have big funding opportunities, but they don't share the opportunities with the society. So how can the people be aware of these funding opportunities if they don't know them, or they don't have the access to get funding for these opportunities? So there are many barriers that we have as social society. Of course, we are learning from these other cases, it's very important to the people that is interested of implementing a restoration project to know other cases. I mean, to have these opportunities to share experiences. So if I know how to do a thing, I can share with you how to do it, so you can do it too. And also we can share this kind of experience to implementing some initiatives in our own land.
Thanks, Gabriela, for sharing some of the challenges you see, which are real, and also some advice for people who are carrying on projects. And now, Renee, could you share some thoughts on funding restoration, considering your experience across landscapes and levels?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Isabel. Yeah, just following along the lines, what Gabriela was saying, it's challenging in great part because our market economy or the economy where we live doesn't value many of the things we produce from nature, no? And there is also ethical component, no? How much a value of an hectare of a species, native species cost, no? It's just it doesn't have a monetary value, no? And that's a challenge, no? But because of that, we have many benefits of restoration that doesn't have that value, and you need government intervention in that case. So in terms of finance, of course, just highlighting again that we need more incentives from the government, no? Because that's where we need support, no? We need support to address all these things that private sector won't account because they don't have a monetary value, no? But in terms of private sector, there are different opportunities that we see. Just want to highlight, carbon is very famous right now in this moment, no? But this is just one of the potential benefits. There are many other benefits. Sometimes we call it not rightly co-benefits, but really the benefits of restoration are beyond carbon, no? Especially for Latin America and Africa, where we are in this crisis more on the adaptation side than in the mitigation side. We do things in restoration for adapt to climate change more than to mitigate, because the emissions are coming from other places, no? But the magnitude, no? But in terms of private finance, so we have opportunities on different levels. I think we need to basically create a new restoration economy. If you ask a farmer what your son, daughter want to be, do you want them to work in the farm as you were working? They probably will tell you, no, I want them to be engineers, medical doctors, work in the cities, no? Which is okay, no? And And it's because sometimes the work around the land it's a lot of work, less revenue, but really it's, we need to find opportunities. We need to value more the work that is being done in restoring land, accounting for the real value. The working in the land, it has a high value that will create and is creating many different jobs. Right now we have proof, for example, that there is a need of biologists, where there is a need of ecologists. It's not just working on the land directly, but also a need to understand what are the impacts of the actions you do in restoration and how those actions benefit or create the benefit you want. Especially, we know that there are many benefits like water, that we know that having a cloud forest is important, but if we have trees probably in areas where we have constraints of water, then it's difficult. So we need scientists, to understand all these relationships, and also that translate into a value in an investment. We also in the network of 20 by 20, we have been supporting private impact investors to try to find investments in the ground. And what we hear a lot from both sides is one saying, there is not enough bankable projects, and on the other side, seems to be a lot of money, but it's not coming here. And what we realize is that it's more complex than just simply saying that there is not enough projects. For us in 20 by 20, it's a lack of understanding between the two things. One is expecting some outcomes that the other one cannot bring, and in both directions. So we need to understand better what we will be able to achieve with restoration, and how the private sector can value that in the right way, not expecting that this will solve all the problems in the world, but accounting for what is the benefit that is being produced, or the ecosystem services that is being produced, either is water, biodiversity, or soil, or others. So we need to understand better what the expectations are, and based on those expectations, do the business we need to do. We need finally to accelerate a lot of the ongoing businesses that are already in many places. We see a lot of agroforestry, we see silviculture with native species, mixed species. We see all these different innovations that are happening in the territory, and it's important in terms of finance to understand that this is not one extreme or the other. It's not just black and white. It's something that we need to find our right place. We have seen in Central America, for example, businesses on secondary forests with native species, where communities are harvesting certain trees, producing revenue that is invested in schools in the community. And if we go to those communities and we tell them, you don't harvest more trees because carbon is the most relevant here, you will destroy the social fabric, basically. So we need to find solutions that really address community problems, and not just simply think, carbon or no carbon, or is beyond that. So I would say, but there are many opportunities, but many challenges, and we need more resources. We need to increase the pace of restoration, and for that we need more finance, and that remains a challenge, but networks are working through that. Back to you.
Thanks, Renee. I think what you mentioned with multiple examples is how we need a more holistic approach for strengthening and supporting restoration action, right? Unfortunately, we are running out of time, so and we will have to get to the end of this nice conversation. So lastly, I would like to ask both of you, how do you see that we could strengthen restoration action? What opportunities or next steps you think are important? I think Renee already mentioned some, but if you both would like to elaborate a bit more on that, and also share some closing remarks. We have a few questions on the Q&A, which I can share with the speakers on the chat box, and maybe we get a written reply for those. But I would invite you both for a final intervention. combining some prospects of next steps and also your closing remarks. So Renee, I would ask you to go first.
No, thank you, Isabel. Yeah, just summarizing some of the thoughts. You know, we need, although we might not like it, but we need policies. We need incentives probably that to be better in each country we work, because without incentives, market won't solve the problems that we are addressing. No, actually, it's causing many. No, so we need we need public policy, but effective. No, very connected to the needs in the landscapes. No. And on the private sector, yeah, we need to scale efforts. We need to bring more finance. It is true that there are many funds right now, Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, that are big, but it is true also that those processes take time not to apply for those funds. There are intermediaries. There is a process to guarantee that the process is transparent and just. But because of that, it requires a lot of efforts, no? And sometimes a small organization doesn't have that time and resources to keep up with a proposal for a big fund, no? So then I invite, and in 20 by 20, we have a small, medium, and large organizations, but the idea of the platform is let's work together, no? If there is big organization that can take this big long-term application process, let's rely on them, but let's keep the small organizations that will do the work in the ground connected so we can apply together. So it's a lot of collaboration that needs to happen. I invite that. And I also want to say really clearly, you know, we have a lot of organizations that work in this space, but there's a lot of competition for resources, and that sometimes doesn't allow us to work together. No, so please, I invite you to use 20 by 20 as platform to work together, because that's the space where we really need to support each other. No, that's what I would say on the closing remarks. Thanks.
Thank you, Renee. I'm glad you pointed out this challenge of competition for resources, but also the need for collaboration. That's crucial. And Gabriela, from your end, what do you think it's important to encourage restoration activities carried out by young practitioners, and also your closing remarks?
Well, first of all, it's very important all that Renee mentioned. I agree with everything, because as a young resource, well, organizations sometimes are lacking of funding because people think that young people can have the strength or the initiative to do anything that can do without any recognition, like monetary recognition, or without any credibility because they're starting. But in our cases, I know a lot of organizations, not only in my country, but as my other restoration steward colleagues that have their initiatives, they're all young, and they are doing an amazing work in their fields and their land as a local initiative. So I really think that for us, it's very challenging to get access to these fundings because we have necessities as young people. So we need a job. I mean, we need to get access to funding to continue to implementing this kind of activities, because as I mentioned, we know the land, we know the necessities of the people. So we really need to continue this work and be sustainable for all our own lives too, not only because we have the power to do it, because I really know that young people have the power to do it, but only because we need to survive from our experience. And also I want to remark that restoration is as I mentioned in the all context at the beginning, restoration is a very broad approach in many perspectives. So it should be not necessarily close to only recover forest, because we will never going to recover an entire forest as it was at the beginning. A degraded area is very hard to restore by itself. But we can have other kind of activities. For example, we could combine economic activities as agroecosystems or beekeeping, timber harvesting, tourism. This kind of activities can be sustainable and can generate more jobs around restoration areas, and obviously accompanied by a technical and scientific advice. But it can be a very interesting approaches to have in a planification of a restoration project, not only focused on the trees or the ground. I mean, we can focus all the holistic view with the people living around these areas, because if we don't do that, people are going to degrade more the area where we live, because they don't understand the ecosystem as the people who really know. I mean, as a biologist, I obviously understand how can a forest function, but the people around are not very aware of this. So if we can involve the people in this kind of activities and obviously provide them some opportunities to have a job and also be connected with the forest, we're going to have a different approach and a different result from all these projects. So this is like one of my main conclusions for the panel. I really think that, as Renee mentioned, we have to collaborate, not only between the sectors, but only collaborate with all the organizations working on this, because we all work for the land and we are work for the world also. So maybe we can do a better job if we stay together.
Thank you, Gabriela. Thank you both for this inspiring conversation. Actually, it's really beautiful and brings us hope to see, on the one hand, someone young that is so motivated and has already so much knowledge, and on the other hand, to see Renee, which is an expert and has so many insights and considerations to bring to the table. So I thank you both for your time and for your contribution. And I'm going to pass the floor to Yelis, our host, for the wrap-up of this plenary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Belle, Renee, and Gabriela, for joining us and showing thoughtful leadership. Really grateful. Renee already shared some resources on the chat. Renee, Gabriela, our audience also has some questions for you. Feel free to respond to them directly in the chat or in the quick Q&A function if you're able to stay a little longer with us. Thank you so much for joining. Moving on to wrap up this part of the event and actually moving to the closing of the event, we will invite Horst Freiber back to the stage. As someone who's served for restoration efforts for many years at many levels, hearing future perspectives from Horst is really valuable. Horst, we're listening to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you very much. It's for me only quickly to wrap up a little bit about what we heard today in the 5 presentations of the project. I think there are hundreds of restoration projects outside still who could deliver also a lot of very interesting points. We listened today to successes, challenges, and potentials. What I noted down was, of course, everything is linked to those who are part of the implementation process of restoration. Communities, families, any participant, farmers. So everybody is looking for, what is the benefit? What is my reward? What is the value, the added value? What is my additional income? How can I improve through this activity my livelihood? So expectations are linked to restoration activities. So these are my first comments, and then my points. I think this conference, digital conference, was, in my eyes, a wonderful first step. It should not leave to this only step, this one step. In my perception, on making these hands-on project experiences available to a wider audience. This should be done not only this year, but it should be repeated within, or hopefully the next 6 months or twice a year. So something like this should happen after that. And it inspires, of course, everybody either on his own restoration projects. So maybe some of these ideas which have been presented and challenges, etc., and successes today have inspired others who have listened to their own restoration projects, but also those, and this is also for me important, who provide funding to restoration projects may have taken some of these ideas for their own project calls in future. So also this is, I think, an important contribution of this first digital conference, which I hope really continues and will be taken up by other organizations or governments to provide funding to do it in this way. I think what we heard, and there was commenting, restoration is not and should never be an ideological framework squeezed into something which is an ideological framework or a bureaucratic concept. It should be open, flexible, and needs-driven approach. So based on the needs which are presented by those who ask or who are be asked to do a restoration concept. So I think this is important in my eyes. I think today it was also a learning exercise, learning from each other. And in some way, it's, as it is a digital conference, it could be also used through this contact building framework as an implementing service which can be used in future by others to contact again those who presented today their project and say, could you give me a more detailed idea on what you have done in this specific opportunity? So it could be also taken as an implementing approach, implement things together via a digital communication. I think what is important is, and as we all are visualizing people, is mapping the restoration projects. I think a map showing where is who doing what would be very interesting, at least as a first stepping information for those who would like to continue on restoration activities. Important for me is also that these restoration activities, that this conference can strengthen the restoration movement globally again. And based on the already existing restoration movements or initiatives like the Bond Challenge, like the AFR 100, like the 20 by 20 initiative. So all these together form already an existing network and global network of restoration activities, but also others could join and should join and look for a common goal. And at the beginning, Christiane Paulus mentioned the 350 million hectare goal extended by the New York Forest Declaration by the United Nations. When this goal was expanded from the Bond Challenge to the New York Declaration decision. So this goal is, for me at least, an existing global goal which everybody could contribute to, but with still using and performing on his level and doing what he is doing. But I think to tell a story to decision makers, donors, that everybody is looking for some goal, which is a global one, but doing a specific thing on his own possibilities is something which everybody can better understand than cooking own meals without looking beyond the borders around oneself. I think what I today also found quite interesting in the presentations was create something like a restoration trademark, something like products from restored areas, give them a specific, well, looking or logo in the markets. So open markets for restored products. I think it is also clear for me, which was also today very clear, restoration is not a project limited 3-year activity. It is at least 10 years or 30 years activity. So any restoration activity has a start, but the end is something which is not be able to reach within 3 years or 5 years of a project life cycle. So also this is something, a message to not only those who do restoration projects, but also to donors and those who provide funding, that extending funds to projects who have started the implementation and who are really providing positive steps or steps which are productive in a way, should be, well, have at least a chance to get a second round of funding, etc., to at least cover 10 years of project life cycle. I think what in my view also is important is that who deals with restoration, who says this is restoration, on the other side, and this is a political side, but also on in other gremia, should also say, yes, I do restoration. On the other side, I tried to maintain and protect the remaining sources, in brackets forests or other sources, ecosystems, or wisely manage these resources. So I think this is two sides of the same coin. Restoration and protection of the remaining sources is a combination. All this, in my eyes, should also contribute to all the international and global goals of the different conventions, either climate change, biodiversity, desertification, or the SDGs, or the existing decade of ecosystem restoration until 2030, that this is a time which we have now in our hands, where we really can do a difference in the next years and show that restoration is an opportunity really to make a change. And I think we should take advantage of this important time which we have ahead of us. And the last point, of course, for me is on these observations that what is important is a political will. Somebody has to take a lead, a political will, showing that restoration is an issue, is a political issue, and because this is important. If there is a government who is pushing for restoration, this will also help to raise funding for restoration activities, projects, initiatives, in order to maintain this movement alive. So these are my conclusions on that hopefully first digital restoration conference, and I do hope really that other conferences will follow very soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Horst. This event is so enriched with your contributions, and I think we can really write an article with all the items that you listed. So thanks so much for your thoughtfulness or championing this work. Well, everyone, it's been 3 hours. I can't believe it. We're coming to the end, and the exciting moment is here. One, we will have our restoration stewards announced. Second, our CEO of Craft is going to give us the rounding up closing words. So I would suggest that we have the video where we do announce our restoration stewards right now, as this cohort of young and dedicated restoration stewards are going to be on the GLF channels very much so, and we can now get introduced to them. So we're going to have Hyginus Lowry, my colleague, sharing this announcement.
Hello, everyone. My name is Hyginus Lowry. I am the Youth Communications Officer at the GLF, and I'm delighted to announce the 2024 Restoration Stewards. Join me to celebrate these remarkable young experts who have dedicated themselves to restoring the world's ecosystems, beginning with their local communities and landscapes. But some of you might be wondering, or might ask, what is the Restoration Stewards program? In a nutshell, it is the GLF's flagship one-year youth program that provides funding, mentorship, and training to help young restoration professionals and their teams develop their local projects and become ambassadors of thriving communities and ecosystems. Before I reveal the winners, let's take a moment to appreciate all the incredible applicants who showed so much passion for restoration. We received more than 300 applications from across Africa, Asia, the Pacific, Latin America, and the Caribbean. Each and every one of them is making a huge contribution to making our planet a healthier and a more just place to live in. And we would like to thank them all for their amazing work. Now, it's time to reveal the 2024 Restoration Stewards.
I am Trisha Bhattacharjee, the 2024 Mountain Restoration Steward, and I am joining you from the mid-elevations of Western Himalayas, Chamba, Himachal Pradesh, India.
Muraho, Mr. Kamanzi Claudine. Nishimiye kuba umwe mu batoranyijwe muri gahunda yo kubungabunga ibimera mu gace k'Iburasirazuba mu Rwanda mu mwaka wa 2024.
Askyurukipan, Gilatanaka, Cuyacanaka, Nayaja, Dayana Blanco. Hola, soy Dayana Blanco, una mujer indígena aymara de Oruro, Bolivia. Hoy nos encontramos muy felices junto al Team Uru porque nos unimos a Restoration Stewards 2024.
Ako si Javi Barsenal, ang 2024 Forest Restoration Steward nga nagaymaw kaninyo halin siya sa Banwakang Kulasi sa probinsya kang Antique sa Pilipinas.
Olá, eu sou Jeane, aqui do SAF, Fazenda Agroecológica Chique. Estou me juntando ao Estudo de Restauração 2024, Piauí, Brasil.
Hi, I am Clement Oko from Nigeria. The reason I would like to become a restoration steward is stemmed from a combination of personal and professional reasons.
Congratulations to all the winners. Your work is setting a shining example for others to follow. We are immensely proud and humbled to work with you next year. We would like to also say a huge thank you once again to everyone who applied. Your work and dedication are helping build a greener and more sustainable world for future generations. And to all of you watching, thank you for joining us today. Together, we can make a real difference and shape the kind of world we would like to live in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hi, Janice. I think it's not only me who is feeling the energizing effect of this video and this great announcement. I am wishing much success to our restoration stewards and our GLF team who work so dedicatedly with these restoration stewards. And it brings me to the last moment. We are delighted to welcome our inspiration for so many of us at GLF Ciferograph and beyond circles when it comes to championing restoration. I'm honored to invite Dr. Eliane Ubaljoro, Chief Executive Officer of Ciferograph and Director General of ICRAF, to give the closing remarks for our event. Dr. Ubaljoro, we're with you.
I just want to congratulate the 2024 Restoration Stewards. It's really an honor to be here and celebrating you and celebrating everybody here today and everybody involved in the Global Landscape Forum. So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to join you for this digital forum and to provide closing remarks. What an inspiring event. People around the world are passionate about this topic. They want to connect, learn, share, and act on their landscape. Over 2,000 people from 130 countries signed up, and the reach on social media is over 3.5 million. Practitioners, scientists, foresters, experts, youth, community leaders, and more, from Guatemala to Germany and from Mexico to Malawi. You've actively shared your thoughts and your questions on social media and in the chat, engaging in a meaningful exchange that's truly global, thanks to the power of our digital world. The work of healing our planet and providing a better world for all is deeply inspiring. And I'd like to give a warm congratulations again to the new cohort of GLF's Restoration Stewards for 2024. We're faced every day with the realities of what a warming planet looks like. It's destabilizing ecosystems and threatening the balances that communities have lived in harmony with for generations. But at forums like this one, we have the opportunity to reflect on our collective power for positive change. We have the opportunity to share from one another, and we have the opportunity to harness our collective wisdom, knowledge, and experience for transformation. Today, we've heard about how global and holistic restoration efforts are building resilient landscapes. We've heard about change happening on the ground and how important local solutions are for solving global issues. And we've learned about how forest and landscape restoration and ecosystem-based adaptation are worthy opponents to the climate and biodiversity crises. From mangrove restoration providing income to local communities in Kenya, to building peace through conserving protected areas in Colombia, to enhancing food security across the Sahel through reversing land degradation, many facets of restorations were touched on this event. Restoration efforts go far beyond carbon. Landscape restoration is a means to so much more, to building resilient communities, creating jobs, opportunities, and securing livelihoods. It's not just restoring the ecosystem, but also restoring the relationships and trust between local actors. It's about collaboration, teamwork, and building bridges for a better future. And women and young people whose lives are disproportionately affected by land degradation must be at the forefront. It's clear that approaches must give responsibility and rights to local communities, the owners and custodians of the land. They know their land. They must be equal partners in restoration efforts. Through collective years of implementing landscape restoration activities, it is also clear that only programs that co-design interventions with local communities, which assure equal benefits and access rights, lead to long-lasting change. And this change will not be possible without generous financial support. The German government's commitment, as demonstrated through ICI, has been exemplary. We need more commitments like this, not just from the public sector, but from the private sector. Investments in nature-based businesses, models, and climate solutions need to be accelerated, especially towards actors in the global south. And funding must be directed at community-led projects, including better connecting climate finance with climate justice and community-led ecosystem restoration. By funding restoration efforts, we contribute not only to environmental well-being, but also to social cohesion at the community level. Initiatives like GLF's Restoration Stewards and GLF-X are instrumental in leveraging restoration for the benefits of landscapes and people. As we close this event, I want to reaffirm both C4 Aircraft and GLF's commitment to continue sharing knowledge, connecting diverse stakeholders, and bringing on-the-ground expertise to the forefront. I am grateful for the continued partnership between the German government and our organization, and I look forward to our shared journey ahead. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, for your commitment, your passion, and your dedication to restoring our landscapes. Together, we are making transformative change for a better planet for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Baljora. Those words are so encouraging to so many of us and resonate so much with what our speakers shared around collaboration, really bringing knowledge sharing forth and connecting at all levels. I can't believe that we're at the end of this event. Hours went by and I'm still smiling. That's a great sign. I would like to thank all of our presenters, speakers, and all of you who tuned into this event, being so active in the chat and really willing to champion restoration altogether. And this was really our collective knowledge sharing moment. I would like to share that we are going to be compiling the insights from the workshops we've led and this event into a summary paper to be shared with the German ministry, but to be shared with the publicly as a landscape news article. So I would say that make GLF your friend in social media, in your work overall, and follow us. And I wish that we connect in events in the future. I wish you all a good day for now.